TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. The Central London Congestion Charge, Ultra Low Emission Zone Daily Charge and the London-wide Low Emission Zone Charge are back in operation to help reduce congestion and pollution. The Daily Congestion Charge has now increased to £15 and operates from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. NHS Trust and care home workers can claim reimbursements. For more information, search TfL Driving. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC, member FINRA SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on,
boxing up goods and rolling them out,
shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. And U.S. stock index futures are falling, the dollar rising with treasuries as the global resurgence in coronavirus cases saps risk appetite. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures, they're down about 11 points. Dow futures down 123. NASDAQ futures, little change. The DAX in Germany's up 0.6%. 10-year Treasury up 5/30 seconds, yield 0.66%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil's down 0.4% or 15 cents at $37.85 a barrel. COMEX gold, little changed, up 70 cents at $17.75.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1217 against the dollar. British pound 1.2423. and the yen is at 107.28. The number of Americans seeking unemployment benefits was higher than forecast for a second straight week. Initial jobless claims in regular state programs falling to 1.48 million last week from an upwardly revised 1.54 million in the week prior. And Macy's cutting about 3,900 corporate and management jobs to slash costs. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen Moscow, thank you so much. It was such a joy this morning to speak with Steve Riley. He is legendary at Imperial College in London. He is the world expert on how viruses move, the dynamics, how they move from urban areas over the centuries out into the rural space. That was a joy. In addition, the joy of speaking to Jason Farley of Johns Hopkins University, and of course this on the terrible change in the pandemic over the recent days. Here is Professor Farley.
So I think, if we look at the states that are experiencing these really large increases in cases, the first thing is clear is that there were some non-pharmaceutical interventions that were rolled back quickly. Florida, Georgia, Arizona, Texas. And so what we're seeing is that cases in states that remained closed for longer have now continued to decline. And cases that opened in places that opened earlier are really seeing these increases day after day, quite frankly.
What are some of the risk mitigation strategy that we should be thinking about now for politicians, but also for individuals?
Yeah, I think that everyone needs to understand that there is no risk other than staying at home and staying, with your family and avoiding contact with others whose exposure you do not know. We have to recall that asymptomatic transmission 2 to 3 days before symptom onset, that a person can actively be transmitting the virus. So importantly, individuals in routine contact with others, politicians being one group that may fall into that category, must be exceptionally diligent, wearing their mask in contact with others. I think you saw with the staffers that were, preempting the Tulsa campaign rally, that were all infected, 6 of them. It's really critical that politicians understand contact of their staff, understand contact of the individuals around them, because they are at great risk given the amount of contacts they have with others. It's the same for any general citizen, quite frankly. If you have lots of contact with people whose exposure status you don't know, you ultimately are placing yourself at greater risk.
Should people wear masks outside or only inside in public places?
Well, so the answer to that is it depends, really. If you're outside in a large crowd, we saw lots of protest, absolutely, you need to be in a mask. Not only, because you're protecting other people. It's an act of altruism, right? It's not really to protect yourself. So I think that's really critical, that this is an altruistic act. I wear the mask when I'm out doors because I'm trying to protect you, not because I'm trying to protect myself. So when everyone does that, though, through this community sense of altruism, it ultimately leads us to greater protection until the point where we have a vaccine or greater levels of herd immunity, if that is going to be even possible with this virus and how limited the antibody response seems to be.
Jason, what percentage of the population do you need to have herd immunity, and do we know how many people have contracted it so far?
Yeah, well, the sero surveys, and our team at Hopkins has put out a report, a national report, really around how to correctly do these sero surveys. But these sero surveys are quite biased, and so what we know now is the data is really convenient for the investigators trying to obtain that data. And so what it means is, hey, let's put out a Facebook ad and have anyone who has internet access and or is not working come by at a certain day and a certain time and obtain an evaluation. And what we really need is much more robust population level estimates. And so that's the data that's often missing. We're getting some trickling in of that data, but that data is few and far between. But those estimates, quite frankly, range variably depending on the sample, depending on the state, and depending on the location. And interestingly enough, studies that have followed populations over time thus far have really shown us that it changes markedly from each time point. So back to your question of how many people do we need? We need greater than 50% of the population to have some level of herd immunity. It probably even higher than that in order to effectively stop transmission.
Yeah, and you're a co-author of this great report that just came out on sero survey. But Jason, what do we know about these antibodies? Do they actually protect you against the virus? For how long? And can you still, even if you're protected, if you have the antibody, can can he still transmit the disease?
Great question. So antibodies demonstrate that our immune system has responded, right, to the virus. So importantly, antibodies can demonstrate, but may not demonstrate that we have protection. So let me provide a little bit more granularity. So what we're seeing in patients with severe infection, so maybe they needed hospitalization, maybe they needed mechanical ventilation, but they subsequently recover, they have higher levels of a type of antibody called broadly neutralizing antibody. Now, those are quite protective against reinfection. But what we're also seeing is that they may diminish quite quickly. And so right now, the key thing, because it's such a short time in the pandemic, is how long they last, right? Our first case is in February, and we're now into June. And so, we really only have like a 6-month window to actually explore that.
Jason Farley with some of the inside baseball, if you will, on this terrible, terrible pandemic. Paul, we can go to the market and look at it, but I think we've got to talk the pandemic today. What thunderstruck me was the change in tone at the state and the local level versus what we're hearing out of Washington. I don't recall that distance in March and April when the focus was on the eastern states.
No, and we're just getting virtually nothing out of Washington these days.
Yeah.
We just don't. The daily briefings, the executive level focus, even out of Congress, and now you're getting some of these mega states like Texas and California and Florida. I mean, you can't pick three bigger ones really that are really having the numbers go the wrong way. And again, this lack of federal leadership is just stunning to me. We don't have 50 Andrew Cuomos around the country.
That's well said. That's brilliant. Can I steal that from you?
I think states would love to steal Andrew Cuomo because he has the playbook for how to
I think Matt Saul, who's running communications for Governor Cuomo, he's going to steal that from you. He's probably going to, you may get the Sweeney role. We don't have 50 Andrew Cuomos.
Yeah, we don't, and we kind of need them right now. So hopefully these states can get ahead of this thing just like we did in the Northeast.
Yeah, we will see. It is extraordinary, folks, this news flow that we're seeing, and we thank all of our team for the commitment, particularly to the Johns Hopkins University, to making us wiser in the epidemiology of this pandemic. A wise data check is, well, future's better than they were, but still quite negative. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree, you get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get in.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. The opening bell brought to you by SEI. Crisis bring out the best in people. Character, community, partnership together as one. SEI. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. And the S&P 500 is lower at the open, down 0.2% or 6 points at 3044. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.4% or 101 points at 25,344. And the NASDAQ little change, down 2 to 9906. 10-year Treasury up 6/32, yield 0.65%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.4% or 15 cents at $37.85 a barrel. COMEX gold is down about 0.1% on $1.60 to $17.73.60 an ounce. The euro 1.1218 against the dollar. The yen 107.26. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Coming up in about 15 minutes, a wonderful interview with LeBron James. Jason Kelly will join us, and we're really looking forward to hearing some of the thoughts of a basketball player who's better than good. Paul, I didn't do well today. I said he was from the Cleveland Heat, and that didn't go over. I didn't get it right.
Yeah, wait, so we're missing sports, Tom. We
are missing sports, and particularly that of the LA Lakers. And I know Mr. James was most gracious about remembering Kobe Bryant as well. Right now is really, really, really important. And we can rush through this interview, except I got to explain the racket, folks. We know that this is a tough sport of economics, investment, of picking stocks. And I get tons of mail all the time, particularly when stocks go down, about those lousy strategists, those economists, they don't know nothing. And what cardinal rule of everything I've done and everything Paul Sweeney's ever done is we're just as interested in those that get it wrong as we are in those that get it right. But with that said, we really, really care about those who have a crystal ball a little clearer than everyone else. Excuse me, there are all sorts of industry. I'm gasping over getting a LeBron. There's all sorts of people, folks, who keep track of what the economists do. And one of the most prestigious houses is Consensus Economics, and this is their Economist of the Year for the United States of America. That is no surprise because he's with a wonderful firm, Oxford Economics. The moment I read Oxford Economics research, I knew it was world class. Greg Dacko joins us right now from France. Greg Dacko with Oxford Economics. Greg, congratulations on being, this is just a wonderful thing to being the Economist of the Year. What did you get right in the mix of economics that allowed you to take the Consensus Economics trophy?
Well, it's always a pleasure. I think in general, what we got right for last year was the fact that we were seeing an economy that was gradually turning, that was gradually slowing. After a stimulus impulse in 2018, we were seeing signs earlier on that the economy was not about to continue to accelerate, as some were believing, but was actually going to gradually cool as the impulse continued to weaken from the initial Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the Bipartisan Budget Act. And that was happening in the context of a global economy that was also suffering pre-coronavirus recession.
Are we in a recession now because of the pandemic, or would we have gotten there anyways?
I don't think we would have gotten into a recession had there not been a pandemic. I know there were a lot of notes that were written about the yield curve inversion being a strong recessionary signal. We were looking for soft growth below consensus around 1.5% pre-COVID. Now, of course, that changed everything with a very significant pullback in private sector activity, and that led us to revise our forecasts very sharply and honestly quite often in the early stages of the COVID crisis.
All right, so Greg, again, we got another couple pieces of data this morning, another jobless claims number, stubbornly high. Based upon what we saw coming out of Washington and that jobs data, how are you thinking about the consumer and then ultimately, by definition, the U.S. economy over the next several quarters?
Well, we're looking at a picture for the U.S. economy where all eyes are really focused on the recovery. One of the interesting features of the global coronavirus recession is that things are moving extremely fast. And when you forecast, you have to be aware of what you don't know. And nowadays, we have access to a lot of high-frequency data, real-time data, which allows us to get a better gauge on how the economy is faring. What we're looking for is a gradual recovery, which will be bumpy. We're still very deep in the hole. And the outdated report on GDP for Q1 is really still at this stage. We're looking for a contraction in GDP growth around 35% in the second quarter. That's actually a little bit better than what we were expecting a few weeks ago, because we did see some strong bounce backs in activity in May, but June is looking like the recovery actually stalled. So we're very cautious about the rest of the second quarter, and going into the third quarter, it may be that the recovery is actually a little bit weaker, especially if we look at the health development.
It's interesting. So interesting on the durable goods orders, though. I'm just to get away from the consumer for just a little bit, but the durable goods orders came in better than expected here. But that's really not what's going to drive the bus, is it? It's really the consumer.
Well, it's both. I mean, it's private sector activity that's going to be driving the economy forward. Consumers, of course, represent about 2/3 to 3/4 of U.S. GDP, so they're really the driving factor behind GDP. But it's very important to see how businesses are faring, because they're the ones that are going to be investing in the future and, importantly, hiring. We're not seeing some very encouraging data at the high-frequency level in terms of employment. Yes, the net flows are interesting and encouraging, with the May payrolls rising 2.5 million. But if you look at the gross flows, and there's a lot of recent research that has appeared, shows that the gross flows of employment aren't very encouraging. And this morning's data on initial claim, again, is a worrying signal that there are still layoffs happening 3 months into this crisis, and that will restrain income and eventually rebound in consumer spending.
You know, Greg, the first minute of this interview telling everybody how great you were 12 months ago. Forget about it. It's old news. Let's look forward. Let's look forward, Greg, a little bit here. And, you know, the simple phrase is half full, half not. We're getting a huge disparity of opinions, not about July and August, but just trying to understand Q4, late Q4, holiday consumption into Q1 2021. What are you publishing on that?
Well, we're tracking the recovery with a recovery tracker that essentially allows us to look at the different components, the different facets of the economy, not just spending, but actually health, mobility, financial conditions, and how those are evolving. And that high-frequency data points to a bit of a stall in the middle of June. And we're a little bit concerned by the fact that...
Greg, wait a minute. Greg, the unemployment rate in New York City is a published 18%. We all know it's worse than that. You just gave us a 35% statistic down for GDP. I mean, I get the idea we're stalling, but there's a lot of people out there, including Lawrence Kudlow of the White House, saying we're looking very VE. I'm not hearing much VE out of you.
No, I think the V is very, very wrong. We're more likely at this stage to end up with a gradual recovery in the second phase. We've been talking about two phases to this recovery. The first phase is a phase where everybody's going to be awed about the very strong growth numbers from depressed levels of activity and think that we're back to pre-COVID dynamism. That's not going to be the economy in which we're headed into over the rest of this year and into 2021. We're going to see a bumpy road ahead, and the health developments are increasingly worrisome across a number of states where we're seeing rising infections, rising hospitalizations, and death rates are gradually creeping up. That's not encouraging. That will lead to a bumpy recovery, and I'm worried about the W here, because we could see a state at which governors across the country start to impose or reimpose lockdowns. We see another fall in activity, which would hurt the economy and hurt the recovery even more.
All right, so Greg, that brings up, I think, the role of Washington, D.C. and Congress and fiscal stimulus here. We had Congress initially, I think, fairly aggressively, $3 trillion, certainly a number that gets your attention. But we haven't heard much out of Washington since. How critical is another round of fiscal stimulus, maybe one that includes aid to state and local municipalities? How important is that to the U.S. economy?
It's essential. I mean, this is not the time to be lifting your foot off the accelerator in terms of fiscal stimulus. What we did see, as you point out correctly, is a very rapid and massive fiscal package that was worth over $3 trillion, which historically has been, the part of the government that's been historically slow. That package was large, big, and early, which is good. But I fear the summer policy paradox, one in which, again, policymakers may be misled by the strong growth figures for the month of May and perhaps even into June, and decide as a result to put in less fiscal stimulus into the economy at a time when we really need it. We're going to see a number of income cliffs on the horizon from the expiring fiscal aid, including the additional top-up money for the unemployment benefits. We're going to see states really struggling to close their budgets. And all these factors may lead to a weaker recovery and may need actually more stimulus to prop up the recovery and prevent a much longer recovery.
Greg Decker, don't be a stranger. That was excellent. Congratulations. It's a exceptionally difficult award to win. Paul, when you win the consensus economics, it's like the Stanley Cup. Yeah. You get a big trophy, and everybody at Oxford Economics gets to carry it around for 3 days.
And drink champagne out of it.
Guy carries it around the company. Greg Dacko there, folks, of Oxford Economics on The View Forward. Right now, she knows how to carry the Stanley Cup with the news in Washington, home of the Capitals. Amy Morris.
They're the last ones who won it, so why not? Thank you, Tom. The COVID-19 pandemic is sweeping through the U.S. heartland. They've set records now for hospitalizations, and businesses are rethinking their plans to reopen. New modeling predicts the virus will kill 180,000 Americans by October. New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey are now asking visitors from Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, North and South Carolina, Texas, and Utah to quarantine for 14 days. The U.S. economic recovery, though, showing those signs of weakening in some states where the cases are mounting. Michelle Meyer is head of U.S. Economics at Bank of America, tells Bloomberg News they are starting to see the early evidence things are leveling off in those states that reopened early.
Whether you look at it in terms of some of the high-frequency data around consumer spending or small business openings from a variety of alternative data sources as well, things are starting to kind of peak out, particularly in the states that are further along in the reopening process.
Macy's is reducing its corporate and management headcount by 3,900. Those cuts expected to save about $360 million a year. And Joe Biden is now leading in 6 states that were key to President Trump's 2016 election victory. A series of New York York Times Siena College polls finds Biden's lead ranges from 6 to 11 percentage points in Arizona, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Now, 55% of registered voters say there's at least some chance they'd vote for Biden in the election, while 55% also say there's, quote, not really any chance they would vote for President Trump in November. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Tom and Paul.
Amy, thanks so much. Down negative 200 points, 25,244, 25,244. SPX above 3,000, 3,028, down 22 points. And the VIX shows some of the angst today, even though the market futures were down more earlier. The VIX right out near new fear, 36.27 on the VIX. That's way over two big figures, 2.31 full VIX points this morning. In the yield space, what you'd expect, lower yields critically, the 2-year yield below 0.18%, just fractionally, but it's good enough for radio. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Good news for wine lovers. The 2019 Bordeaux vintage is one to buy. Even better news for wine collectors. Prices are revealing some of the best bargains since 2008. Sold this spring after Lehman Brothers collapsed. After sampling 125 wines, Bloomberg's wine columnist calls 2019 Bordeaux superb, perfectly balanced, rich, and energetic with a specially satiny texture. You can find deals in every price category, from a powerful Chateau Lafite Rothschild for $525 to a racy violet-scented Chateau d'Isson for just $49. Grounded by the pandemic, aviation geeks have found new ways to cope with cocktail hours in Concord glassware and custom furniture. UK-based Plane Industries and California-based Moto Art specialize in turning decommissioned aircraft parts into high-end furniture, like clocks made from Boeing 747 fuselage. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Global news.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and the S&P 500 is moving lower today, down 0.7% or 20 points at 3029. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.8% or 196 points at 25,253. And the Nasdaq's down 0.8% or 76 points at 9832. 10-year Treasury up 6/30 seconds, yield 0.65%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. It has been a wonderful day of snippets of an important conversation with LeBron James and his business partner, this part of a Bloomberg Business Week effort of our Jason Kelly. We'll get to Mr. Kelly in a moment. First, though, here is LeBron James.
LeBron, it strikes me that this moment has come to you in many ways, but it's a moment that it feels like you were anticipating to some extent. How does it feel to face this right now?
Jason, I don't want to say that I was anticipating it. I just want to say that we've always been in this position. We've always strived. We've always had to plan for this moment. It's something that I've always had a passion about, and that's, letting people know and having people to understand how important we are as Black America, and the powers and the creativity and the language and everything and the struggle that we've had for so long. And for me to have the brands that I have and having Spring Hill and having Uninterrupted, and now today having a nonprofit organization, and we are more than a vote, it's allowing people to now really sense what we've been striving to do from the very beginning. So it's you always talk about timing, and I guess the timing is perfect for what we've always wanted people to understand what we're all about as a company and as a brand and as individuals.
LeBron, I have to ask you, what has it felt like to you these last 3 months? I mean, first of all, the season stopping abruptly, within a week or two of when we last saw each other. When we left off, we were talking about the playoffs. We'll talk a little basketball later. But the pandemic and then the killing of George Floyd, just walk me through how that's felt. It must have been tremendously traumatic. And I just wonder how you felt through all of this.
For our team and for our city of Los Angeles, we've been through a lot, this year. You look at the death of Kobe Bryant that we had to deal with, and obviously, our prayers are still with Vanessa and the two daughters that's here, but we've dealt with that as an organization and as a city of Los Angeles. So, that was a tragic moment for us. You come to the point where the playoffs are almost around the corner, and then, it stopped because of a world pandemic and COVID-19. So, we just all had to be at bay and just kind of wait around and see what was going on and see what was happening, but understanding that the health of every individual is so much more important at that point in time than worrying about, chasing a ring or chasing a championship because there were lives at risk and no one had an answer to it. And then bring us up to speed to the George Floyd killing, and just seeing that video and seeing, how many people were hurt, not only in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, but all over the world, and especially in the Black community, because we've seen this over and over and over, about police brutality and the things that goes on in the inner city when being, racially profiled as an African American Black man or as a Black woman, and things that's going on. So, it's been a lot that's going on in 2020, and we're still trying to make the most of it and continue to be powerful and continue to be heard, and using this opportunity for the better of change at the end of the day.
LeBron James, you can watch that full interview with Mr. James and his business partners, part of Bloomberg Business Week today at 5 p.m. Wall Street time. That on Bloomberg Radio and on YouTube. You can search for Bloomberg Global News. That'll be an important interview with our Jason Kelly, and we're thrilled that the star of afternoon radio could join us. All right, now this is way too early in the morning for you, Jason.
It is super early. Still in my T-shirt.
You were on February, January, courtside, you, Katzenberg, and the rest of them, Jack, watching the Lakers play. And you were setting up to do a business interview. And Jason, this became so much more than just another $100 million transaction of a guy who's a sports guy and he's made a lot of money. How has this interview changed in the last 4 or 5 weeks, given the state of this medical and political nation?
Well, you nailed it, Tom. I mean, I really went into this story thinking it was going to be something completely different. I've been working on it, as you say, for months. And when I last saw LeBron before our Zoom call earlier this week, you're exactly right. It was in Los Angeles. We were at the training facility, and he was talking about the playoffs, talking about making a run. Now, at the same time, we were there to talk about this company that he and Maverick Carter were putting together, this big investment coming together. And in some ways, and this came up a number of times as I was reporting this, and Tom, I think you'll like this, he evoked, and many people evoked, another famous resident of Los Angeles, another transplant, Wayne Gretzky, who talked about skating to where the puck's going to be. Yeah. And they really felt like this is the company, and the world came to them in many ways.
Interesting. Let me bring in folks. And, I mentioned the Cleveland Heat today and gotten a lot of heat for that. Alfred, New Jersey for that. Let me bring in someone who actually understands basketball, Paul.
Jason, I think it's really interesting timing for LeBron James because I've always compared him, as many people do, to Michael Jordan. And I think Michael Jordan during his career and even now is a little bit reticent to speak out on social issues. That does not appear to be the case with LeBron. How does he kind of view his role, I guess, in just the discussion that society is having these days?
I think if you look at the history of LeBron James, especially going back, 10, 15 years, maybe even back to when he was in high school. I mean, keep in mind, this is a guy who was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he was a junior in high school. Wow. He has invented modern athlete empowerment in many ways. And when you think about the lineage of the Lakers, that is one thing. When you talk to LeBron and you say, so who are you standing on the shoulders of? He points to Muhammad Ali more than he does other players. He gives respect to a lot of the players that came before him, whether it's Magic Johnson or Michael Jordan or Kobe or Shaq, and even, other athletes in other sports. But Ali is the comparison that keeps coming up. And if you think about what Ali did outside of the ring and you look at what LeBron is doing, I think it's fair.
Jason Kelly, congratulations on an important article and much more than that. This interview is just really extraordinary, folks. Part of what Bloomberg Business Week is doing here on sport and the business of sport as well. Let me get it up here on the bat phone as I can. Very important here. Of course, the full LeBron James interview on Bloomberg Business Week today, 5 p.m. Wall Street time, then on Bloomberg Radio. And again, on YouTube as well, searching Bloomberg Global News. And I believe you can hear the star of Bloomberg Radio, Jason Kelly, this afternoon. I don't know, Carol's taking the month off, we'll see. But Jason maybe will be there as well. Let's leave it at that. It is a really, really difficult day across the Sun Belt of this nation. We thank all of you for listening. Sirius XM channel 119, and also, of course, on Bloomberg.com. Much, much more for you. This is Bloomberg Radio. Good morning.
Business is constantly evolving.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
It's not business as usual right now, but Square has tools to help your business adapt. Like Square Online Store. You can start selling online in a few easy steps with pickup, delivery, and shipping options. And if you are selling in person, you can take contactless payments with hardware like Square Reader and Square Terminal. you'll get your money the very next business day, so you can put it to work. All these Square tools work together, no matter where you're selling, and there's never hidden fees or long-term commitments. Find out how Square can help you get back to business by visiting square.com/UK. Square Up Europe Limited is regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority for the provision of payment services.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most.
Hi, Mom.
From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Listen. That's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
How do you kind of view the volatility in the marketplace here?
The harshest downturn for American workers in history.
Companies across the board, across industries, really trying to shore up their balance sheets.
There's very, very disturbing dynamics at work.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
There's only so much that you can speed up vaccine development. Because of all the dislocations, there's always relative value trades that you could be doing.
This could be a U-shaped recession rather than a V-shaped recession.
It's the uncertainty, I think, that is really spooking everyone.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
It is a Thursday risk-off session for the moment. Not completely risk-off, though. We'll dig into the economic data, which broadly has been pretty good for risk assets, but there were some negative pieces of that data today with Michael McKee in just a few moments. We'll also be with Dave Wilson to give us a rundown of what's going on in the stock market. First, though, let's get a Bloomberg Business Flash with Greg Jarrett.
Down for day two, Vonnie. U.S. equities are down for a second day as the threat to the American economy from a resurgence in coronavirus cases continues to climb. We look at those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. S&P's down 0.25%, down 7. The Dow's down 0.2%, down 51. And the Nasdaq's down 0.4%, down 35. The 10-year is up 4/30 seconds. The yield 0.66%. West Texas Intermediate crude has moved from the from the red slightly into the green. It's up 0.5% at $38.20 a barrel. COMEX Gold's down 0.3% at $17.68.90 an ounce. The dollar yen 107.20. The euro $1.12.16, and the British pound $1.24.13. Billionaire wildcatter Harold Hamm bought more shares in the shale producer he controls as oil prices recover from their historic plunge. Hamm has added $57.1 million worth of shares in Continental Resources, where he is executive chairman. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is underway now. Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. Looking at the market here, a little bit of a risk-off feel, as Vonnie was suggesting. It got those jobless numbers come in stubbornly high, I guess people would call it. It's a little bit better on a week-on-week basis, but came in higher than expected. Let's see what's going on in the markets broadly defined, and we'll dig into those jobless numbers with Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Plus, we welcome Michael McKee, international economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg News. So, Dave, give us your thought. What are you seeing kind of here in this kind of first half hour of trading?
Well, it's sort of an oddball morning in a sense because, you look at what's doing well in the S&P 500, and it's the groups that have not done well all year, specifically energy and financial stocks. So that's 2 out of the 11 main industry groups. The others are all down. You're seeing some of the more economically sensitive areas of the market take a bit of a hit here. We're talking about, the consumer discretionary category. I mean, you think about things like airlines and cruise lines. And what's interesting there is that they were, really kind of slumping before the opening bell, and they've stabilized. They've come back. They're basically little changed at this point. Similar story with the home builders. I mean, you had numbers out of KB Home that really didn't go over well. In their latest quarter, orders down 57%. KB Home shares are down 11%, but you look at the builders in the S&P 500, and they've come back from pre-opening losses. You've got D.R. Horton and Lennar higher at the moment. So, as much as broadly speaking, stocks are down, you're not talking about all that much of a move. In the S&P 500 lower by 0.1% at this point. So there has been sort of a show of strength here in early trading that one might not have expected given what was happening before the opening bell.
So, Mike, let me bring you in here. Michael McKee, International Policy and Economics Correspondent. We had a raft of economic data, some of it for the first quarter, some of it May preliminary data. But we got, for example, weekly jobless claims, a smaller drop than estimates. We had exports down 5.8%, personal consumption down 6.8%. But we had a big rebound for durable goods, and core PCE was up. What is it all telling you?
It's generally bad news about the economy, but that's no surprise to anybody. Jobless claims, the most high-frequency indicator that we got today, and that's what the market is focused on. And yes, we had a much smaller drop than anticipated, 1,480,000. We're 14 weeks in. Why is we seeing almost 1.5 million jobless claims every week still? Are there problems with the system, or are that many people still losing jobs? That's a question we don't have an answer to, but it is something that is worrisome, because if you don't have a job, you won't have money to spend and to keep the economy going. Continuing claims drop, but they're still very elevated. And don't forget that fiscal cliff in July when those extra unemployment benefits drop off unless Congress does something about it. As for the durables orders, the easy answer to that is we had a very sharp drop. It was down 18.1% in the month of April. And in May, we have a 15.8% return. So we're still way below where we were. When you look at the dollar figures, in May, there were $194 billion in durable goods orders, but in February, $246 billion. So we're still way, way down. One of the more interesting numbers, even though it is a preliminary number, is this advanced goods trade balance. The trade deficit widens to $74 billion, significantly larger than we anticipated. And it's almost all because there were no exports from the U.S., big drop in exports, and that is going to hurt growth. Anticipate the Atlanta Fed GDP tracker going down. Second quarter growth figures are going to have to be revised lower now.
Hey, David, the data, I guess some of the news we're starting to see out of some of these big states like California, Texas, Florida, as it relates to the virus really, really going the wrong way. How do you think the market's feeling about that news? I mean, back in March when we started seeing in the Northeast those kinds of numbers, really, really tough for the market.
Yeah, I mean, you look early on, one example that maybe gives you a sense of the answer to that question is look at Walt Disney. They've had to postpone the reopening of their California theme parks, specifically Disneyland and California Adventure. They were planning on mid-July reopening, specifically July 17th. And so you got Disney shares lower by 1.5% in response to that. So, that may give you some insight into how people are sort of interpreting the results that come out day to day on the virus, to the extent that it's affecting companies' ability to do business here. You had this anticipation that you're going to get sort of a recovery, and there's a real question of whether the virus, as it unfolds, is going to allow that scenario to play out the way a lot of investors have been expecting here.
Well, we're seeing a little pump in stocks now. The Dow has actually turned positive, and it's mainly on banks. You'll see Goldman Sachs up 2.5%, JP Morgan after it. This on a decision just now. Wall Street banks soon be able to boost investments in venture capital funds and pocket billions of dollars they've had to set aside to backstop derivatives trades. Basically, the Volcker rule is is getting a little easier to adhere to. Dave and Michael, whoever wants to take this, why now? Why are we getting an easier Volcker rule now with a $40 billion reprieve on swaps?
Wow. I mean, we live at a time where deregulation has been the rule. And bear in mind, it's not just about the latest decision. It's also about what we get later today when we find out the results of the annual stress test that the Fed does on America's biggest banks. So, you figure that perhaps there's some optimism that they'll come out okay and be able to increase dividends at a minimum. I don't know about buying back shares necessarily, because we've seen a lot of companies sort of back away given how things have unfolded for business here. But at the very least, I mean, there is the decision of the moment, and there is more to come later on.
I should point out that on the stress tests, these are going to be reported a little bit differently than they have in the past. We aren't going to get an indication of whether or not the banks are going to be approved for their dividend or buyback plans today. They normally had released the two different indicators, the stress test and then the capital plans separately about a week apart. Both come out today, but there's not going to be a judgment made on whether or not you can go ahead with your plans. That is going to be told to the banks next Monday, and it isn't going to be released publicly until August, although banks are allowed to say whether or not they got a positive indication on Monday. There's also going to be something called a sensitivity indicator, which is how sensitive the banks are going to be to the COVID depression, but we don't know how that's going to be used. We know it'll be used in the determinations, but they haven't given us a whole lot of indication about what it is and how it works.
All right, we will certainly follow up that, as the good folks at Bloomberg News will do so. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. And Michael McKee, thanks for joining us. Mike's the international economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg News. Covered a lot of ground there. Again, the market trying to digest kind of what the economic data we saw today, not quite as strong as perhaps some would have liked, as well as more cases of the coronavirus in various big states. Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you have for us?
Well, those increasing coronavirus cases have a lot of businesses rethinking their reopening plans, Paul, in some of the hardest hit states eyeing new restrictions. Texas was one of the states that hit another record high for new infections yesterday. Galveston County Judge Linda Hidalgo says she's talking with Governor Greg Abbott about putting restrictions in place.
The reason I've not yet put us on red and come out with the new steps is because I'm having those conversations with the state, trying to get to a place where our restrictions will be enforceable.
Arizona is seeing a surge as well, and a city council member in Scottsdale is now facing calls to resign for mocking his city's face mask mandate during a rally yesterday.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
And the crowd cheered as Republican Guy Phillips tore his mask off, but fellow Republicans, including Senator Martha McSally and Governor Doug Ducey, are calling his remarks despicable for echoing a slogan from the Black Lives Matter movement. A congressional watchdog says the federal government's quick action to issue stimulus during the pandemic led to more than $1 billion in fraudulent payments, while slow action to address the health risks might have made the outbreak worse. The Government Accountability Office says the Centers for Disease Control reported incomplete and inconsistent data on testing from state and local health departments, and the Supreme Court has just backed the Trump administration in its efforts to quickly deport people who enter the country illegally. In a 7-2 decision, the justices reversed an appeals court ruling that gave asylum seekers a broad right to make their case to a federal judge. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
People love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Bonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what does it do to relations going forward?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
How important is that statement there?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Market upheavals.
The narrative is driven. Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street. Remember those incredible family adventures? And that feeling of being part of something special. We'd love to have you back. Go on. Feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoiners.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Parish cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day. And they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Paresh and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
Newlywed to newborn. Ordering out to tucking in. Dream car to driveway. Isn't it nice when things arrive quicker than expected? Enter your location into our digital new car locator, and it instantly tells you if the BMW you want is available nearby. So it'll be with you quicker than you might think. Search BMW New Car Locator today.
There's lots to discover when you join Tesco Mobile, like our big deals on big data SIMs, including our 8 gig SIM for just £10 a month. You'll also find great service with 99% UK network coverage. Visit us in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 26th of the 7th, 12-month contract and unlock 4G enabled phone required. Fair use policy applies. 99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK. Charges and terms at tescomobile.com/terms.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL Show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks come off losses and are now little changed. This as investors weigh the threat to the American economy from a resurgence in coronavirus cases. The S&P is now little changed. The index is flat for the month after one of the highest ever increases in U.S. cases increased the possibility that some areas will have to reinstitute partial shutdowns. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P is little changed. The Dow is up 0.2%, up 50, and the NASDAQ is down 0.1%, down 15. The 10-year is up 4/32, the yield 0.66%. West Texas Intermediate crude's in the green, up 1.3% at $38.50 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.4% at $17.6780 an ounce. The dollar yen, 107.19. The euro, $1.1229. And the British pound, $1.2413. The number of Americans seeking unemployment benefits is higher than forecast for a second straight week. This adds to signs that the recovery is cooling amid the pickup in coronavirus cases. Initial jobless claims in regular state programs fell to 1.48 million last week from an upwardly revised 1.54 million in the prior week. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, what we've seen from this pandemic is how it's really impacted pretty much every industry, every company out there in terms of how the executive team and the management kind of think about their strategies, their daily workflows. A lot of companies, a lot of management teams have had to completely rethink how they do their business and to get a sense of kind of what they're thinking about, what's on the top of their to-do list. We welcome Krishnan Ramanujam. He's a president and head of business and technology services at Tata Consulting Services. Krishnan, thanks so much for joining us from Mumbai. Give us a sense of kind of, boy, I just can't imagine the conversations you're having with your clients, but what are the 2 or 3 things you're asking your clients or suggesting to your clients that they think about as they navigate a new world order impacted by this pandemic?
Good morning, Paul. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. So I would probably talk about 3 or 4 things, Paul. The first and foremost, we've been telling our clients about how it is extremely important for transformation to be looked at, not as a one-time moonshot, but it's something that needs to be navigated on an ongoing basis. This is a phenomenon we call as perpetual transformation. Gone are the days you can take one moonshot at transformation and then live happily ever after. The technology and so many other factors are changing ever so often. Enterprises need to have the ability to navigate multiple transformations, smaller transformations, perpetually. That's a key capability. That's the first and perhaps the most important advice I give to my clients. The second one I talk about is about location-independent workforces. There is this concept called agile in our line of business. It's extremely effective. And there was a trend that said the teams had to be co-located. But over the last 5 years, TCS as a company has been a pioneer in terms of advocating how location independence is a key if Agile has to realize its potential. And I think the pandemic has only clearly demonstrated how prescient our forecast was around that. And the third thing that I would probably say is about being borderless and collaborative. I think it's extremely clear that the winners of the future are going to be enterprises that can collaborate very well among themselves internally within the company, as also with the partners. So there are many, many technologies that enable this, being data-centric, leveraging cloud, and so on and so forth. That in turn results in so many other benefits, but I'd probably stop at these 3 things: perpetual transformation, location-independent workforce, and collaborative, borderless mindset. Those are the 3 things I would pick as the top 3 pieces of advice that I give to my clients.
Krishnan, give us an idea of how you managed to relocate 90% of 450,000 employees to working remotely. I mean, that's a phenomenal exercise.
Yes, thank you. It still looks so surreal to me. If you ask me around mid to late March when this pandemic hit us, Bonnie, whether I'd be 3 months later or whether I'd be sitting comfortably in my home and almost back to normal in terms of working from a remote location, I would have said the odds are completely against it. So I was extremely nervous, and so were all of my colleagues in the senior management team here at TCS. But TCS is very well known for its, never say die attitude, and we loved the challenge. It did require a heroic effort from many of our employees, but the fact is that everyone knew that all of us had to come together to make it happen. And as a company, we put customer centricity as the top of our priority list. So unless we very, very quickly became effective in terms of working from homes, many of the critical and essential services for our customers would suffer in a big way. Right? So once that pressure is on us, it's extremely important for us to make it happen. Also, the government here, the local authorities, everybody cooperated, as also our people demonstrated an excellent sense of responsibility and work ethic. So it required a huge effort, but a combination of support from the government and the huge demonstration of work ethic and customer commitment from our employees, that's what made it happen. But to say that today we are upwards of 96-97% of our employees working from home is indeed remarkable. And all of this happened in a matter of about 4 to 5 weeks.
So, Krishnan, in about 30 seconds, love to get your sense of kind of how things are in India right now. We're starting to see some resurgence in cases here in the U.S. How is the virus trending in India right now?
In India, still the curve is going up, but the encouraging news is that the test positivity rate is either flat or actually coming down. That is the important thing, which means two things, which means we are testing enough, and the fact that the test positivity rate is not going up probably means that it is not out of control. Of course, in a country like India with 1.3 billion people, the numbers are going to be staggering, of course. But I think so far so good, even though that's not to say what will happen tomorrow, Paul, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Well, these days we never know what to expect. Krishnan, thank you for joining us today. Fascinating company and a fascinating industry to be in right now. Krishnan Ramanujam, President of Business and Technology Services at Tata Consulting Services, coming to us from Mumbai there. And he obviously had to relocate, his staff, Paul, or the company staff, 450,000, but they're also dealing with everyone else's staff working remotely as well. So it really boggles the mind. He's been offering serious advice to CEOs during the pandemic, including perpetual transformation. A lot of people get stuck during a time like this because there are so many logistical concerns, but really now is the time to be transforming and to continue to move forward.
Yeah, technology, as Krishnan mentioned, is just a key part of that, trying to help people remain productive during this remote time. Exactly.
Stay tuned. We have more coming up, a lot to talk about. We'll have LeBron James later this hour too. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks have been fluctuating this session and are now little changed. Investors are weighing reports of new infections around the country and that lockdowns may be reimposed. Bayer, known as Bayer in the U.S., took a major step toward wrapping up litigation over its Roundup weed killer and other products with a $12.1 billion settlement. Roundup litigation was by far the biggest liability that the chemical giant inherited when it acquired Monsanto for $63 billion in 2018. The parent of Chuck E. Cheese has filed for bankruptcy protection. CEC Entertainment is the latest in a string of companies hammered by the pandemic. The company has more than 600 Chuck E. Cheese outlets and over 120 Peter Piper pizza venues. And the co-founder and former CEO of CrossFit has sold the company for an undisclosed price. Greg Glassman stepped down earlier this month following an angry response to a controversial post on Twitter. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
It's a stock market driver.
Now they're starting to see a little bit of panic from policymakers.
It's a global political force.
How will this epidemic reshape big tech and its relationship with Washington?
It's a virus.
This coronavirus is a global pandemic.
Is there a safe haven?
And the facts matter.
The situation is so bad because of the virus that is simply unavoidable.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Economics.
All this doom and gloom was...
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
Listen, that's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at why big tech isn't the only loser in President Trump's visa freeze. Plus, at the top of the hour, three-time NBA champion LeBron James sits down for an exclusive interview with Bloomberg's Jason Kelly. Will bring that for you. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
As we go into the green, Paul, the opening drop for stocks is being unwound with bank stocks flying higher on a regulatory rollback that will free up some capital. Now, banks are posting their biggest intraday gain in 2 weeks. It's notable that there's also a strong bid for energy. The two groups, that's banks and energy, have taken a drubbing of late. Tech stocks have been soaring. Let's take a look at the numbers now. S&P is now up 0.3%, up 8. Dow's up 0.5%, up 114, and the Nasdaq's up 0.2%, up 21. The 10 years up 3/30 seconds. The yield is 0.66%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 1.1% at $38.43 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.3% at $17.69.90 an ounce. The dollar yen 107.15. The euro $1.1227, and the British pound $1.2412. Anheuser-Busch InBev is looking to buy back nearly $4 billion of bonds as it continues to clean up its massive debt load. The world's largest brewer is targeting 3 series of dollar notes due in the next 3 years, which have $3.7 billion in principal outstanding. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
Well, it is 10:33 on Wall Street and time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. First, I want to reiterate the Supreme Court decision that came out today, bolstering the government's ability to quickly deport people who enter the country illegally. Now, it's siding with the Trump administration on that, a refusal to give asylum seekers a broad right to make their case to a federal judge. So, Supreme Court rules against court access for asylum seekers. It's a separate story, but slightly related in that it goes to the tendency of President Trump to keep people out of the USA. He signed an order on Monday temporarily halting access to several employment-based visas, and that affects hundreds of thousands of people seeking to work in the United States, these H-1B and H-4 visas used by tech workers primarily. Let's bring in someone who's written a great column on it. Take him of Bloomberg Opinion. Tay, why is this generally not a good idea for the United States and its productivity?
So I see where Trump's trying to do. He's saying that by restricting this immigration, we're going to free up jobs for Americans. But we're needlessly risking one of the most important strategic assets that the U.S. has, which is the Silicon Valley innovation machine, which is the envy of the world. And it's where the most ambitious, best, brightest entrepreneurs and engineers around the world want to start their companies, which is here. And we're kind of risking this great thing that we have just needlessly. And if you look at the history of the Valley and American tech companies, Bond Capital had this great slide where 60% of the most highly valued U.S. tech companies were founded by either first-generation, second-generation immigrants. We're talking Google, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, even Apple was second-generation with Steve Jobs. So we're needlessly risking this most important thing, and already companies and countries like Canada, the CEO of Shopify is going out there saying, "Oh, come to Canada instead." So I just argue that it's just very short-sighted to risk this thing that we have that's so great by limiting these visas.
So, Tay, I know at one point, these visas were so important for the technology companies because, quite frankly, America wasn't producing enough engineers, enough computer scientists. Is that still the case?
I think, yes, that's still the case. When you talk to these companies, there's like, we don't have enough engineers. Shopify says all the time that their biggest constraint is they're not finding enough talented computer engineers. So that's still a huge constraint. And when you see this avalanche of criticism in the last couple of days, we're talking Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, everyone's coming out saying they're up in arms. Even startups are saying this is going to hurt our ability to recruit talent. It's going to hurt the economic recovery. One of the other visa suspensions stops internal transfers inside these companies where they can't move managers around. So it just throws a wrench into the operation of these countries and also puts a massive amount of uncertainty when we're trying to recruit the best and brightest people in the world.
I mean, it seems to be almost, a reflex on the part of President Trump. As soon as things are not going particularly well at the White House, he does something to block access to this country. Is there an argument for that going too far at some point, and for these companies like Google and Facebook to just continue to set up operations abroad? I mean, their tax headquarters are usually in other places anyway.
I mean, I agree with that. Like, if we can't bring people here, why all these companies are going to start international offices and try to recruit people to those international offices. But I think the bigger problem is it might attract all these immigrants to go elsewhere, like go to Europe, go to China, or even stay where they are instead of coming to American companies and generating the innovation that we need. And I mean, this is not a zero-sum game. This is not like, oh, we don't have this, we're not going to, it just takes up an American person's job. If we miss out on the next Google or NVIDIA, these are thousands and thousands of jobs and economic growth that we're not going to get. I mean, it's not a zero-sum game. We can miss out on huge innovation, economic growth, and job creation that we'll totally miss out on.
So, Tay, about 30 seconds, are there other industries besides technology that are going to be impacted by this move?
Yes. I think a lot of short-term workers, there's restrictions on camp counselors, au pairs. So this is not just tech. This is across the board. All these work visas are getting restricted for the rest of the year. And then green cards, the ban for green cards is extended to the rest of the year, too. So this is just a vast kind of visa suspension for immigration altogether.
Well, and definitely some of the offices are closed these days anyway, both in the US and in other countries. So, you could argue that it's just disruption. It doesn't mean that all these people that are seeking it won't eventually get these visas, but for the moment they certainly won't. And we don't know if that will be reversed, so we don't know what the situation will be in coming months. It's certainly fascinating. And, I noticed the other day on Twitter, the Shopify CEO tweeting out, look, this might have happened, so then come to Canada.
Right. I've seen that, yeah. And, open for business.
Yeah, exactly. Tay, thank you. Always great to dig into these orders in a lot more detail, because there's usually a little more there than meets the eye initially. That is Tay Kim of Bloomberg Opinion. We do like to check in on Bloomberg Opinion at least once a day. Paul, would you go to another country if a tech company were to ask you?
Well, I think if you're an immigrant, you're looking for the best opportunity. Now, historically, that's been in the U.S., but I think you're absolutely going to be flexible there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're moving anyway, why not move where you're wanted, right?
Exactly.
All right, we are going to continue to cover markets. This is Bloomberg.
Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you have for us?
Well, Paul, Houston is facing an apocalyptic July 4th. That's the warning from the Dean of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College. Peter Hotez tells Bloomberg News intensive care wards in the Houston area are swamped due to the coronavirus surge. Texas Governor Greg Abbott just suspended elective surgeries in his state's biggest cities. And Tarrant County, Texas, home of Fort Worth, is reportedly requiring masks now. That's according to Bloomberg radio affiliate KRLD in Dallas. Even with COVID-19 climbing in more than half of U.S. states, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow says he still doesn't see a nationwide shutdown.
Fatalities are still down, and there's a lot of positive declines in cases, just as there are negative declines in cases. So, you just have to walk through that. But no, we will not shut the economy down.
Meantime, the Government Accountability Office, Congress's official watchdog, is criticizing the Centers for Disease Control for inaccurately reporting state and local testing data, making it difficult to track infections. The House is set to vote this evening on a police reform bill after Democrats blocked a Republican-led measure in the Senate.
George Floyd Justice in Policing Act establishes a bold, transformative vision of policing in America.
Congressional Black Caucus Chair Karen Bass rallied supporters outside Capitol Hill ahead of today's vote. The White House has indicated President Trump will veto the measure. Among other things, it would ban police chokeholds and make it easier to sue officers accused of excessive force. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing.
than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting...
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
When family video calls are too good to miss, your virtual quiz team is demanding a rematch, and one more episode just isn't enough. You need loads of data. Get a massive 30 gig for £10 a month from Smarty Mobile. With no speed restrictions, unlimited calls and texts, and a flexible 1-month plan, it's no wonder you Switch awarded Smarty Best Value SIM-Only Network 2020. Search Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. See smarty.co.uk.
What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find better solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most.
Hi, Mum.
From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes.
Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Paresh cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day, and they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Paresh and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
We've got a lot of catching up to do.
Hello everybody, it's lovely to be with you again.
Sky Sports has over 100 live games across the Premier League and EFL in just 6 weeks. Everything is still to play for. Scores to sell, relegation to avoid, Europe up for grabs, and the titles to win. Upgrade to Sky Sports today. Requires Sky Sports Premier League and football packs. See sky.com/sports for details.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Sponsored by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the 6th straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit Commonwealth.com to learn more. Stocks are a bit higher on eased banking regulations, sparing earlier losses as U.S. coronavirus cases continue to spike, threatening the economic recovery. Let's take a look at those numbers as we do every 15 minutes. The S&P 500 is up less than 0.1% up 2. The Dow's up 0.1% up 33, and the Nasdaq's up 0.2% up 18. The 10-year is up 4/30 seconds. The yield 0.66%. West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.8% at 38.33 a barrel, with COMEX gold down 0.2% at 17.7140 an ounce. The dollar yen 107.20. The euro $1.1225, and the British pound $1.2415. On those banking regulations, Wall Street banks will soon be able to boost investments in venture capital funds and pocket billions of dollars they've had to set aside to backstop derivatives trades as U.S. regulators continue their push to roll back post-crisis constraints. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
The World Health Organization says coronavirus cases globally will top 10 million next week. Cases in Latin America, meanwhile, haven't even yet peaked, although they have risen 25 to 50% within the past week in some countries. Also this week, the IMF projecting a deeper global recession this year, GDP shrinking 4.9%. Let's bring in someone who knows the region of Latin America very well and can tell us what's to come. Bill Rhodes, President and CEO of William R. Rhodes Global Advisor, and of course, former Citibank Chairman. Bill, how bad does it get in Latin America? Many of these countries were already on the brink of, at least stagnancy, if not recession. Can they make it out of this without too much scarring?
Great to be on with you, Vonnie and Paul. I think Latin America is in the worst crisis, basically, of the last century. And the IMF, as you mentioned, had a very negative report talking about growth in Latin America and the Caribbean being down this year 9.4%. And the largest economy, Brazil, is in a free fall, mostly because of the situation of COVID, which is out of control. The prognostications that the World Health Organization just came out with show that Brazil will pass the United States in total cases and deaths by the end of July.
So, Bill, give us a sense of kind of, as I think about Latin America, we've been talking about this for weeks, that you think about the lack of the healthcare system, or the state of the healthcare system broadly defined in Latin America, certainly unprepared for something of this scale. Is there a sense of when this thing, or is there a sense that some of these countries can ever get a handle on this before it's really too late?
Well, I think you have a combination of that driving the debt crisis, which, as I've mentioned to you all before, is the worst, I think, in the last century. And so it's going to take them time because their health systems can't be, corrected overnight. And I think they're going to come out of this very slowly next year. But Brazil is showing the worst figures, and Mexico right along with that. I think Argentina, believe it or not, with all their debt problems, it has a better health system. and I think they can weather it much better. Uruguay and Costa Rica, I think, are in the best shape, both economically and with their health systems with COVID.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Argentina in a moment. It does seem to be getting closer to a debt restructuring deal, for example. But generally, Bill, is there anything systemic about the financial world in Latin America that might cause a domino effect were one of these countries to get into serious trouble with the IMF?
Well, I think you have the situation in Argentina where the Macri government already, when it came into power, borrowed very heavily to settle their debt, and they couldn't control inflation, and so they are a very difficult situation. But in general, even the best economy in Latin America now, which has been for the last decade, has been Peru, is in serious trouble because their health system hasn't been able to hold up in the coronavirus. So I think you already had some countries already in trouble: Venezuela, Argentina, Ecuador. And now with the COVID crisis, it just exacerbates it. And so it's going to take time, and the IMF has to play, and the World Bank, a bigger role than they have been in trying to help these countries out.
So, Bill, to the best of your knowledge, what do you expect the IMF and the World Bank to do going forward? Because it seems like this is going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, they have to make sure they have proper plans in place, but obviously the country has got to be willing to take the proper measures. I think Ecuador is prepared to do that. I think with Guzman as finance minister in Argentina, he understands this. I must say that he got his doctorate at Brown and in the William R. Rhodes Center, so I'm a big fan of his.
There you go.
But I think people feel that an arrangement will come in the coming weeks with Argentina. Venezuela is a basket case in every way, economically, health-wise. It's a tragedy what's going on there. But even Colombia, which has had the proper policies, is having problems. So what I see is a long-term workout here, and we'll start to see a turn next year, but the rest of this year is going to be very difficult in Latin America. And anyone talking about a V-shaped recovery in Latin America, forget about it. And then you have Mexico, where López Obrador, first of all, like Bolsonaro, didn't want to recognize COVID was a problem. And the IMF is particularly negative on two countries in Latin America. One, Mexico, where they're talking about a 10% drop in GDP, and in Brazil of a 9% drop, although the Central Bank of Brazil just came out with a report, which I think you featured earlier on, of a drop of 6.4%. which would be the worst in the history of Brazil, which was just coming out of a recession prior to this hit.
Yeah, I mean, it boggles the mind. AMLO talking about coming to Washington in early July, which is literally like a week away, to kick off the USMCA trade agreement, assuming that will even happen. And, it's going to be necessary for Mexico to have trade, right, Bill? So what happens if there's some kind of a setback in the trade talks, or, difficulty with the supply chains?
I think all of that, if that happens, spells bad news.
So, Bill, just give us a sense of China real quickly, because they are a big lender to Latin America.
They are a very big lender. Case in point is both Venezuela and Ecuador. But even Brazil is Brazil's largest trading partner. And they have lent heavily through the One Belt, One Road. And the Kiel Institute estimates that in total in the world, they have out about $520 billion. And it's not clear what China is going to do on restructuring, debt forgiveness. They haven't shown their hand. They went along with the Group of 20 arrangement to hold payments to the end of the year, but no one knows what they're going to do afterwards. And just remember, when we had the last recession, the Great Recession, they had double-digit growth. I'm talking about China, and they put in over $800 billion in stimulus and saved us from a Great Depression. But now they have very high debt to GDP of over 300%, and their growth this year is, if they're lucky, will be 1%. as against where they were last year at 6%, and 12, 13, 14% in 08.
Right, so they're not going to be able to play that same role.
Exactly.
Bill Rhodes, President and CEO of William R. Rhodes Global Advisors and former Citibank chairman, giving us an update on Latin America, a very grim prognosis for that region of the world, both from the perspective of the pandemic, but also the economic fallout as well. So we will continue to follow that important region of the world. This is Bloomberg.
Business is like a puzzle.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing, so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million Lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
At Asda, we're helping you shop safely by keeping our stores clean and limiting customer numbers so you can keep 2 meters apart. With our Scan and Go mobile app, you can reduce contact at the till too. Asda, we're all in this together. Subject to availability. Mobile data charges may apply.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
Will technology lead us out of this crisis?
We don't know how many companies can accept people back on their roster.
The Fed seems to have really flexed its muscles.
There's still a coronavirus risk.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
To wring out that buy-the-dip mentality, that takes time.
Are we looking at a more damaging break in the labor market?
Does the shape of the yield curve matter?
We're looking at late 2021, early 2022, where it really feels quote-unquote normal.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Boy, a jam-packed hour coming up. Leading off with three-time NBA champion LeBron James and his business partner, Maverick Carter. They sit down and speak with Bloomberg's Jason Kelly. We'll bring you part of that interview. Plus, U.S. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia speaks with Bloomberg anchors Alex Steele and Guy Johnson. We'll have that for you also this hour. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Well, they started in the red, Paul. They moved to the green, and now they're back in the red again. It's called fluctuation. That's investors weighing the threat to the American economy from a resurgence of coronavirus. Let's look at the numbers as we do every 15 minutes. The S&P is now down 0.1%, down 2. The Dow's a little changed, down 12. And the NASDAQ is little changed. The 10-year is up 3/32, the yield 0.66%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 0.6% at $38.24 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.3% at $17.6940 an ounce. The dollar yen, 107.20. The euro, $1.12.13. The British pound, $1.24.03. Some of the world's most indebted companies are looking to clean up their balance sheets as the pandemic risks jeopardizing their finances even further. Occidental Petroleum and Anheuser-Busch InBev are seeking to buy back bonds through separate tender offers launched today. Both are targeting debt due in the next 3 years. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
Time for a look at small caps. We have Dave Wilson with us. And Dave, it seems like small caps indices are mirroring the broader indices overall. The financial services doing better than other stocks today because there's at least a bright spot for the financial services.
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, you're not seeing much more direction in the smaller companies than you are in the larger ones. The Russell 2000 index at the moment is little changed. S&P 500 down 0.2%. The Russell's biggest gain belongs to GNC Holdings, whose ticker is GNC. The nutritional supplement retailer is up 30.5%, trading at about 80 cents a share a day after filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. GNC is closing up to 1,200 stores and looking to sell itself. Athersys, ticker ATHX, has added 30%. The developer of stem cell-based medical treatments received a buy rating and new coverage at Bank of America. And Rite Aid, ticker RAD, has risen about 19%. The drugstore chain posted a narrower loss and higher revenue for the fiscal first quarter than analysts expected in a Bloomberg survey. Steepest drop in the Russell belongs to Xeris Pharmaceuticals, ticker XERS. The supplier of drug delivery technology has lost 34.5%. after starting a sale of $20 million in stock and $60 million of convertible notes. And a company I mentioned last hour, KB Home, ticker KBH, is down 13%. The home builder said fiscal second quarter orders plunged 57%, far more than analysts predicted. Sales for the quarter also trailed estimates.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much for that. Well, LeBron James and his business partner Maverick Carter, they sat down recently for a wide-ranging interview with Bloomberg's Jason Kelly. The future Hall of Famer and Carter discussed their joint business ventures, the pandemic, and the need for change after the killing of George Floyd and the protests spurred by his death. Let's listen in part to that conversation right now.
LeBron, I do wonder, I think back to 2014 and Eric Garner and the T-shirt that you wore, and the NBA has consistently stood behind you and its players in terms of protests. Other leagues have not done that, most notably the NFL. Now the NFL has changed its tune. What do you make of that?
I do know one thing I can speak from is what I'm a part of. And I'm a part of a league with a great commissioner in Adam Silver, and he's always listened to the voice of his players. And I've always respected him for that. He's given us an opportunity to, when we feel something that's very wrong with society, that's very wrong with what's going on in our communities, that we can speak upon that and use the NBA shield to back us. And I have nothing but respect for Adam Silver. As far as the NFL, I'm not in those locker rooms. I'm not with those guys, but I do understand that an apology, I have not heard a true official apology to Colin Kaepernick on what he was going through and what he was trying to tell the NFL and tell the world about why he was kneeling when he was doing that as a San Francisco 49er. So I just see that to still be wrong. And now they are listening some, but I still think we have not heard that official apology to a man who basically sacrificed everything for the better of this world. So I can say that about that.
And Maverick, I wonder about the Kaepernick issue from your perspective, knowing the business world, the endorsement world, the economic element of this. How does that change going forward, given that I think it's fair to say Colin Kaepernick was vindicated in a lot of senses?
Yeah, well, I think, the fact of the matter is Colin Kaepernick did what was on his heart. He did what he felt was right. He took all the right steps. People always obviously look over that he met with the military. I think it was a Marine or maybe even a Navy SEAL that told him sitting was the wrong thing to do, that he should kneel. That's where he actually got the idea. He took the right steps. But I think as Black people, we've been ringing this alarm for a long time. And the rest of the country who are, I happen to believe most people are good, so who are not even racist, have just been hitting snooze on it because it's just the system has been set up in a way that even if you're not racist, right, that you still perpetuate a system that oppresses black people. And I keep telling people bias and racist get the same results. So if I worked at Bloomberg and you just gravitate as a human to the people who went to the same school as you, drink the same beer as you, go to the same place to hang out as you. So therefore, you don't have to be racist to still be in a system that oppresses black people. And I think, we've been saying this a long time, that it's in the fabric of America. It's in the DNA. It was actually designed that way. And unless we actually stop and really make hard turns and changes to reverse the social, political, and economic systems, then it's still going to go on. And many people go, well, I'm not racist. And I go, you're not. But you still have benefited from a system and perpetuated a system that oppresses black people. So I think Colin definitely championed that in a big way. But this has been going on for hundreds of years, and black people have been saying this for hundreds of years.
That was LeBron James and his business partner Maverick Carter. They were speaking with Bloomberg's Jason Kelly about a wide range of issues. They're, I think also, in addition to their business venture, talking about some of the larger racial issues in this country right now. You can catch that full interview in its entirety coming up on Bloomberg Business Week today at 5 p.m. Wall Street time, and on Bloomberg Radio and on YouTube by searching Bloomberg Global News. So a fascinating cover story, Vonnie, that Jason has been working on for months on Bloomberg Business Week, talking to LeBron James and his business partner, Maverick Carter.
Yes, and let's remind people that it's Spring Hill that's being launched, a new media company, in fact, founded by both of them, and it's raised $100 million from the likes of Guggenheim Partners, UC Investments, Elizabeth Murdoch involved as well. So it's really fascinating. It'll be interesting to see what emanates from this.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the last hour, we were speaking with Jason Kelly about his story, and we were talking about, kind of comparing LeBron James with Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan historically has kept a relatively low profile as it relates to speaking out on social matters. That's kind of been his policy throughout his career. Whereas LeBron James, a similar stature on a global scale, has chosen a different strategy and a little bit more outspoken, weighing in on some of these big issues. And I think some of his business ventures reflect that as well.
Well, it's interesting because different generation too, right, Paul? I mean, Michael Jordan would have been a little bit older. It would have been possibly a little bit more difficult for him to do that, and definitely changed his tune around 2016, where he said he couldn't be silent anymore and began to make some statements on it. But LeBron hasn't had those difficulties or those personal and professional blocks to overcome, and so he's a little bit more open about all of this. It's just a fascinating story.
Yeah, so check that out on the Bloomberg Business Week. That's this week's cover story. You can get that on the terminal as well. And again, 5 p.m. tonight, Wall Street time, on Bloomberg Radio and on YouTube by searching Bloomberg Global News to get that full interview with Jason Kelly and LeBron James and his business partner, Maverick Carter. Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you have for us?
Well, Paul, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is suspending elective surgeries in his state's largest city. Tarrant County, the home of Fort Worth, Texas, is now requiring masks. That's according to Bloomberg radio affiliate KRLD in Dallas. All this as the coronavirus continues to surge in America's heartland. Florida just reported another 4.6% increase in new cases, another day higher than the previous 7-day average. Governor Ron DeSantis says he gets it. Young people want to go outside, but they need to think twice.
Let's just be real. I mean, you have what you can put out, but then you also have a divergence between what the requirements are and what the compliance is.
Meantime, the NFL is making its first schedule change due to the pandemic. ESPN was first to report it's canceling the August 6th Hall of Fame game that typically kicks off the preseason. The NFL is also postponing this year's induction ceremony. President Trump is taking his re-election campaign to Wisconsin today. That trip comes as a New York Times Siena College poll shows him trailing Joe Biden in that state, along with 5 others that were key to the president's victory in 2016. Bloomberg's Kathleen Hunter reports the president is taking an unusual position for an incumbent as the outsider candidate.
Biden, for his part,
is trying to, emphasize the experience that he has and say that he's, with someone who can be a steady hand on the U.S. government, on the federal government at a time of, multiple crises that the U.S. is facing.
And today, the president visits a Wisconsin shipyard and takes part in a Fox News town hall. Biden will also be on the campaign trail. He's heading to Lancaster, Pennsylvania for a healthcare event. The Supreme Court is backing the Trump administration in its push to quickly deport people who enter the country illegally. In a 7-2 decision, the justices reversed an appeals court ruling that found a Sri Lankan man who was arrested near the Mexican border had a constitutional right to have his asylum case heard in court. Another prominent Republican is coming out in support of Joe Biden. Former presidential candidate Carly Fiorina tells The Atlantic that she sees this year's race as a binary choice and she cannot support President Trump. Fiorina has said she voted for the president back in 2016, even though he made fun of her appearance in a Rolling Stone interview. And South Korean President Moon Jae-in is urging North Korea to recommit to peace on the 70th anniversary of the start of the Korean War. In a speech today at Seoul Air Base, Moon called continuing confrontations between both Koreas a waste of national power. He said peace and unification are a duty to those who suffered through the Korean conflict. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
And that is Nathan Hager there in our 99.1 studio in Washington, D.C. I want to point out that we'll be speaking with the Labour Secretary Eugene Scalia in just a few minutes. Alex Steele and Guy Johnson with that interview on the current state of the American economic recovery. Also jobs, of course. Not such a pretty picture. Weekly jobless claims coming in today. They did fall, but still coming in at 1,480,000 initial jobless claims. That was down from 1.54 million, but not as big of a drop as economists had estimated, Paul. The insured unemployment rate falling as well, but to 13.4%. I mean, it's a massive, massive number. No doubt the Labour Secretary will suggest that it would have been even more massive were it not for everything that the government did. But it's very hard to look at those numbers and not feel like there's a big problem out there.
There really is, and I think one of our guests earlier mentioned that it was 14 weeks into this, and we're still having these types of numbers.
All right, let's send it over now to Bloomberg TV and Alex Steele and Guy Johnson with the Labour Secretary.
Do you help black employment?
Well, the economy before the coronavirus hit, of course, was the single best economy that African Americans had experienced in this country. It was an economy that was great for Americans all around, with unemployment that hit a 50-year low. Job creation was more than 3 times what had been predicted when the president came in. But unemployment for African Americans was particularly low. And that was one of the really great achievements of that economy. So I think looking forward...
I was going to say, Mr. Secretary, undoubtedly correct, but no one expects us to get back to where we were. So when you take a look at, say, wages for black employees are lower than whites, and the unemployment rate is continually higher for those in the community, you need to fix that. So how do you do that?
Well, Alex, going forward, the same policies that delivered the record low unemployment that we had until the virus came are going to be the policies that matter going forward. That's lightening the tax burden on American business. It's eliminating unnecessary regulatory burdens. That led to great job creation. And as you know, it also led to wage increases that were greater for people in lower income brackets. So those are all very good things for African Americans. I think a couple other things going forward. One is the president's proclamation on Monday suspending immigrant workers until the end of the year to provide a buffer to give American workers a greater opportunity to get back into the workforce. I think that's going to help African American workers. It's going to help the economy more broadly. And then we have reforms that we're going to be looking to make to some of those immigrant worker programs, too, that I think are going to deliver benefits across the board. The other thing I'd mention is the USMCA goes into effect next week. And that was one of the president's great achievements earlier this year, bipartisan legislation that could create as many as 500,000 new manufacturing jobs in this country. And that's going to be a boon, again, for all working Americans.
Mr. Secretary, Guy Johnson in London, why does keeping smart people out of the United States help the U.S. economy?
Well, the change that we've made is to give smart Americans a better opportunity to get jobs in an economy where we've made progress over the last few weeks with 2.5 million jobs added in May. We know we've added a lot of jobs since then, but we've still got too many Americans out of work. We want to give them an opportunity to get back to work. If, in fact, a business can't find an American worker and there's a critical need to be filled, there will be an exceptions process under the president's order. But, Guy, long term, we're going to reform this program precisely so it does a better job of bringing super talented workers into this country rather than low-wage workers who are competing with Americans and undercutting American workers' wages.
Can we pivot and talk a little bit about today's claims data?
Sure.
The indications are from this high-frequency data that what we're seeing in the U.S. economy is a stabilization at a relatively high level of unemployment. Do you think we're starting to see a more realistic kind of view of what is happening emerging from the data? Because up until now, we've seen a very strong bounce back. Do you think we're now starting to see evidence that that bounce back is slowing down?
I don't read this data that way, Guy, although I think it's a fair question because the initial claims number was a bit higher than had been projected. The number that really caught my attention was the continuing claims, that is, the people that are remaining on unemployment. And that dropped by about 767,000, a big drop. But there was also a correction for the prior week. You put them together, and we've got 1 million fewer people on unemployment today than we thought we had a week ago. That's progress. And the big report, as you know, will be a week from today when we put out our June jobs report. And I'm hopeful that will show really significant progress along the lines of what we saw in May. I think that will be a more reliable indicator than, initial claims are just claims filed. They're not necessarily claims that are going to be accepted by the state.
So even if we do get a better number for jobs Friday, it's still going to be bad. It'll be a less bad kind of number. And at the same time, at the end of this month, that additional assistance in the unemployment checks from the CARES Act wears off. Anecdotally, Mr. Secretary, I have friends who literally will not be able to live without that extra money. What are you going to do for them?
Well, Alex, you're right. The $600 benefit that was in the CARES Act, which was a really important benefit that the President and Congress provided when the economy was being closed down in March, that expires at the end of July. But we're going to be in a very different situation at the end of July. Let's see what the report shows us next week. But we know the economy is reopening. We're not in a situation anymore where government authorities are saying, essentially, you can't go to work. So I don't think that $600 benefit is the right policy in an opening economy come August.
So I wonder if there's a happy medium, because specifically I'm talking about the services industry, because if you're a waiter and you're going back and you work on tips, you're not going to be getting back to where you were pre-COVID. So your tips might go from $100 a day to $50 a day. So you're losing that money. Would you think about an income subsidy, for example, like France is doing? President Macron said something very similar today, working with unions to help subsidize worker pay to compensate from the loss they're missing. Can you do that?
Well, something that we already have is what we call a short time compensation. The idea is that a workforce can be brought back, but maybe not all work full time. They're brought back on a part-time basis, and they get a blend of pay and unemployment benefits. That's being done some now, and I think that's a concept to look at. Obviously, we have continuing state unemployment benefits are available, and we'll take a look at whether there are any federal approaches that remain necessary. But you have that state benefit, you have the opportunity for short-time compensation, and we're focused most of all on growing the economy again, on creating those jobs. The president did such an extraordinary job of that up until the virus came. We have no reason to think that the economic fundamentals of the country are substantially different when they were just a few months ago. So I'm most focused now on reinforcing the policies that led to record job creation and getting people back to work rather than focusing so intently on the unemployment system itself.
Mr. Secretary, there are large parts of the United States where the hospitalization count is now rising and rising dramatically. We're seeing it in Texas, we're seeing it in Florida, we're seeing it in California. Did these places reopen too quickly? Is there too much emphasis being placed on reopening the economy at this point, at the expense potentially of public health?
Well, Guy, I don't think it's quite right to say that there are large parts of the country that are seeing these flare-ups, but we are seeing some flare-ups in parts of large states, and it certainly has to be and is being taken seriously. No, we did not reopen too early. We knew that as we opened, that there would be some increase in cases. We know far better now how to deal with this virus than we did 2-3 months ago, and we have a much greater capability to address it in terms of the tests that are available, ventilator capacity, and all of that. So these flare-ups are serious matters to take a look at. The virus is out there. Americans do need to continue to exercise discipline so that we can stay open. But you look across the country as a whole, the reopening is going well. It's going safely. But we will continue to focus on these flare-ups as they occur.
Mr. Secretary, it's really hard to agree with you on that, though. When you have Texas, California, and Florida, I mean, Texas suspended all elective surgeries. They're looking at reaching hospital bed capacity in certain areas. And Houston is a huge medical center, and they're having some serious problems. The government seems to no longer have control over shutdowns or not. If I'm living in Houston, I'm probably not leaving my house and I'm not going shopping. So how does that then trickle through to the labor market? You're going to have more layoffs potentially, or second round layoffs, just because people just want to stay home themselves, because these are huge states with a huge rise in cases.
Well, Alex, I got to disagree with you. I think these flare-ups are serious. I think you're exaggerating the current situation. The local authorities are well aware of it. They're looking to address it. We here in the administration are in contact with them and looking for ways to help. But again, you look across the country as a whole, the reopening's gone very successfully. And what's happening in these specific locations is a reminder of the importance of discipline, of being careful about the virus, that it's still out there. It's not a judgment on the reopening as a whole.
To pivot away from what we've just been talking about, Mr. Secretary, let's talk a little bit about investing and how public money, public pension money via funds should be invested. You have written that the profit motive is ultimately the final arbiter of whether or not decisions should be made versus versus another investment. Why is impact investing wrong? Why is ESG investing wrong, particularly at a time when we see such need for changes in the way we approach the climate and changes in the way we approach society? We started this conversation talking about Black Lives Matter.
Well, Guy, you're referring to a rule that the Labor Department put out earlier this week regarding so-called ESG investing in the context of private pension plans here in the U.S. And obviously people like the opportunity to, as I put it in an op-ed I wrote, to do good while also doing well financially. But some questions certainly have been raised about some of the ESG rating systems out there. How reliable, thorough are they really? You see systems that one rating is high for a company, another rating system rates it low. There have been questions raised by the SEC about how some of these funds are being promoted. The key under our law for pension plans is simply that pension plans are to be managed with one goal. That's maximizing Americans' retirement savings. That's a really, really good social objective. It shouldn't be compromised by fiduciaries to those retirees who are pursuing political ends that cost those retirees money. That's what our proposed rule addresses.
Okay. Interesting in the light of what the Business Roundtable is kind of moving towards, but we have to leave the conversation there. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much indeed. Eugene Scalia, the U.S. Labor Secretary. This is Bloomberg.
That was U.S. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia speaking with Bloomberg anchors Alex Steele and Guy Johnson on a wide-ranging conversation from all things from the pandemic and the impact on the economy to the current state of the jobs market. Again, we had jobless claims today, came in a little bit higher than expected. So really weighing in on the employment situation and the economic situation within the U.S. Right now. Let's pivot right now and talk to our good friend Barry Ritholtz. He's founder of Ritholtz Wealth Management, Bloomberg opinion columnist and host of Masters of Business. Barry, what was your takeaway from the discussion with Secretary Scalia?
Kind of shocking to hear the Department of Labor Secretary doesn't seem to know what the word fiduciary means. I kind of had to rewind that and do a double take. His take on ESG is malignantly malinformed. The data on this shows that this has performed at least as well as other actively managed accounts, especially over the past couple of years. And if people want to express their views through their portfolios, that's up to the individual investor. The fiduciary, the advisor who is working with the client, their job is to put the client's best interest first. It's kind of shocked the way he spits that word out as if it was acid in his mouth. You know, the studies have shown that having non-fiduciaries advise on 401ks and other retirement accounts cost $17 billion a year. If he's really concerned about maximizing investors' retirement savings, enforce the fiduciary rule and make everybody who advises on that account have to put the investors' best interest first. It's a really simple solution. I was shocked by the double talk I just heard.
I mean, it's so interesting because obviously the Labour Secretary can propose whatever he wants, right, Barry? But this is something that would be pretty detrimental, I think, to a lot of workers out there at a time when there is, a skyrocketing unemployment rate and initial jobless claims that just are not coming down fast enough and so much uncertainty out there.
I don't want to let my politics get in the way of responding to the Labour Secretary, but I have a full dashboard of COVID-19 data, and I look at this every day along with all the other data I run through, and I don't know if he's looking at the data, but what we're seeing is an increase in testing and an even larger increase in infection rate, and the whole Sun Belt is doing poorly. Look at RT.live. Shows you the R1 measures of state by state. You have 33 states that are still showing a greater contagion and the numbers going in the wrong directions. The early states, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, their numbers are coming down, the early infection states from international travel, mostly from Europe. But now we're seeing the states that reopened. Look, the facts are a lot of these states ignored the White House guidelines, ignored the CDC guidelines. It's hard to look at the data and say, this is going great. The reason the market got shellacked earlier this week, at least in some narratives tellings, is because, we're not even waiting for a second wave. The first wave hasn't run its course, and the numbers are heading in the wrong direction. Florida, California, Texas, those are both red, blue, and purple states. The virus doesn't care about your politics. It's going to infect people when given an opportunity, and we're continuing to give COVID-19 an opportunity to spread. We are not doing this well compared to other countries.
It's interesting. So, Barry, given, again, that shellacking you mentioned earlier in this week, I agree that in large part due to some of the virus news, it seems like I'm just wondering how we play this again. I mean, is it just steady as she goes and recognize that this is probably going to be a longer pull than maybe we had initially hoped for?
So we've kind of gone full circle. The initial fear was this is a multi-year process to get a treatment, get a vaccine, develop herd immunity. We're nowhere near herd immunity yet. You need well over 50% of people to either have a vaccine or exposure to get that. And, we kind of got very enthusiastic. There is lots and lots of positive news coming out in terms of treatment and vaccine testing and the amount of treatment we're doing. Those have been moving in the right direction, but they are also being confronted by a lot of, let's call it lazy and unfocused behavior that can lead to the spread of this. The other factor that I think is important from a market perspective, not from how rapidly we're spreading the disease, is simply at a certain point, markets and investors lose their ability to get shocked. And once you cross a World War II number of American deaths, a lot of the horrific, stunning shock of that, you become somewhat inured to it. And so, hey, the good news is the death rate is going down, partly because a lot of the spread of COVID is taking place amongst a younger and younger cohort. The average age of infection is going lower, but that's still dangerous. And remember, you're always on a 2 to 3 week lag from testing to infection to mortality.
Well, and it's going down for now, but we're hearing today that, Texas is overwhelmed, and even the governor is coming out saying
Houston,
it's sweeping.
Huge problem.
Yeah. Houston, yeah, exactly. And, obviously with people on ventilators, you don't want to forecast it, but it would seem more likely than not that there will be more deaths in Texas. Barry, are market participants looking to the next presidential cycle, and are they assuming that no matter who it is, that it doesn't really matter because the Federal Reserve is in there and there's plenty of backstopping of this market and it won't change no matter who the next president is?
That's always an interesting question. The traditional wisdom has been for a long time that markets like a divided government. One party has the Congress, the other party has the White House, and everybody has to reach across the aisle to work together. I think that's sort of a glib overstatement, and we do all have a tendency to put too much emphasis on what the White House or Congress has done. For the most part, markets are going to do what they're going to do. The economy is going to do what it's going to do. There is very little correlation between the two. It certainly feels that way on a day-to-day basis. I haven't seen any indication that the market is discounting one side or the other winning. Whenever I read that, it tends to be filled with people's personal bias, and they take what the market is doing and somehow craft it into a narrative. I had a little disagreement with my friend Jim Cramer on Twitter yesterday, who said the 2% fall in markets had to do with Biden's increase in ratings. It's like, wait, this market is up 40% while the incumbent was in free fall. Why are you picking on Wednesday as your indicator? Isn't that a little bit of personal bias there?
Jim who? I'm just kidding. Barry, thank you so much. It's always great to talk to Barry Riddles, who doesn't pull his punches and always has the smart take on what's going on in the market and in political life and generally in investing. Don't forget to listen to his Masters in Business podcast. Just another brilliant episode week over week over week. So thank you for that, Barry. All right, let's move on. But before we do, I just want to point to a headline. Speaking of Texas, the governor has just halted new phases of reopening its economy. The governor, once again, has just halted the new phases of reopening Texas's economy. So there's that.
Yep.
Let's turn now to some real estate news. Obviously, every sector of the US economy feeling difficulties right now, and one of the ones really hurting is real estate. So let's bring in our next guest from UBS Wealth Management, the person who heads up real estate, Jonathan Woloshin. So Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us. What does it look like in terms of rents, landlords versus tenants versus lessees and so on in recent months? Who's winning and who's desperately on the line between solvency and bankruptcy?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I think it varies a lot by end market. Probably the most challenged sector is without a doubt retail. And if you just look across the different sectors of retail broadly, the enclosed malls, the power centers, and the strip centers, you've seen the enclosed malls have the lowest level of rent collection based on the public company data that we've given. And those numbers range anywhere from 15 to 25% of those companies that are reported. It's certainly better for the strip centers where they have access to, say, grocery stores and more needs-based type things. It gets certainly better as you move into other property types. The rent collections so far in the apartment business, surprisingly in the office business, have been actually very, very good. Now, some of this has clearly been driven by the extraordinary movement we've seen both on the monetary and fiscal policy side. One concern that certainly does exist out there is that what happens at the end of July when the excess unemployment benefits of $600 a week expire if they are not extended. But right now, without a doubt, the biggest challenges we're seeing are in retail land.
John, how about as I think about kind of the work dynamic, people working at home more, is that a net positive or net negative for office buildings and office building REITs?
Yeah, and I think it's a little early, as I wrote in a report, to write the epitaph for office. That clearly we're going to see some behavioral changes post-pandemic. You're going to see some companies that are going to have some employees work remotely full-time, are going to move some of their folks to suburban-type offices. They're going to continue the trend of moving some of their operations to lower-cost geographies. But the flip side to this is that over the course of many, many years, we've been densifying office space, and that's just a very fancy way of saying cramming more people into the same amount of space. The old adage in the office business used to be you allocate 250 to 300 square feet per person. Those numbers have shrunk dramatically over the years to, on average 125 to 150. The co-working model actually shrunk that model even more. So in a post-COVID world, as we de-densify, even if we have less people working in buildings, you're going to need more space for those people. Now, clearly, there are going to be winners and losers in the office market. We think those who have newer buildings with more touchless controls, better HVAC controls, that are able to more quickly adapt to a post-COVID world will be winners. But I think this belief that no one will work in a high-rise again, no one will work in a dense city, no one will work in an office, I think it's a little bit premature.
John?
Yeah.
Real quickly, because we're out of time, where does UBS see opportunities in real estate? Because where there are difficulties, there's also an opportunity for somebody else.
Yeah, and I think the biggest winners, two of them are actually non-traditional real estate sectors. That'd be wireless towers and data centers. You think about we live in a mobile and data-centric world. But the other one is the warehouse and industrial sector. Retail's pain has been industrial's gain. Certainly, e-commerce is not something new, but it's something that has clearly picked up a lot of steam. But I think the other thing with industrial is, if you look at the world we live in, and this really started... I'm sorry?
No, continue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and this really started even pre-COVID during some of the trade spats we were having. We're going to see more multi-shoring, and we're going to see more near-shoring and more on-shoring. All this is going to be good for industrial real estate long-term.
All right, John, thank you so much. Fascinating conversation. Jonathan Woloshin, UBS Global Wealth Management, head of US Real Estate. Time now to get to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. and Nathan Hager.
All right, Bonnie, thank you. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has halted new phases of reopening his state's economy as the coronavirus continues to surge in the heartland. Earlier, Abbott had halted elective surgeries in major cities, with Houston area intensive care units close to capacity. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia tells Bloomberg, despite the recent surge in cases in more than a half of U.S. states, he does not think the country reopened too early.
We knew that as we opened, that there would be some increase in cases. We know far better now how to deal with this virus than we did 2-3 months ago, and we have a much greater capability to address it in terms of the tests that are available, ventilator capacity, and all of that.
This evening, the House votes on a police reform bill. 1 month to the day, a black man's death at the hands of Minneapolis officers sparked nationwide protest.
Exactly 1 month ago, George Floyd spoke his final words, "I can't breathe," and changed the course of history. Since that horrific day, Americans from every walk of life and corner of the country have been marching, protesting, and demanding that this moment of national agony become one of national action.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is their way of saying never again. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIPC.
COVID-19.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Day one. It's not day one of work. It starts way before that. It's day one of having the belief you can get there. It's knowing that even though it's been hard, you're ready for what's to come. Start your day one with Barclays Life Skills and join the 10 million we've helped so far. Barclays, make money work for you. 10 million life skills figure independently assured within our 2019 ESG report.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We can replace your battery at over 700 stores and garages, or even at your home or work with our mobile experts, so you can enjoy an engine that starts first time, every time, and start enjoying the open road again.
Are we nearly there yet?
From battery replacements to tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a machine? Or to someone called Mac, or Jack, or Miguel, or Haley, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks have been fluctuating, now moving a bit lower. Investors are weighing the threat to the American economy from a resurgent coronavirus that we're seeing across the country. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P's down 0.2%, down 7. The Dow's down 0.2%, down 50, and the NASDAQ is a little change, down 5. The 10-year is up 3/30 seconds with a yield of 0.66%. West Texas Intermediate crude's up 0.75% at $38.29 per barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.3% at $17.70 even per ounce. The dollar yen 107.23. The euro's $1.1214. The British pound $1.2403. Pickup orders boosting sales for restaurants and grocers at better margins and delivery, prompting many to build out services they hope customers will favor even after the pandemic has subsided. Some supermarket and restaurants say they want their pickup operations to wrest some online orders back from apps, such as those from Instacart and Grubhub. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn on Bloomberg Radio.
So we just had word out of Houston. The governor is stopping the reopening of the economy there in Texas. That, as you know, it's getting overwhelmed. The COVID-19 pandemic tearing through the U.S. heartland, setting records for hospitalizations, forcing businesses to rethink their plans. Let's bring in someone who's been covering this for the past several months. Margaret Newkirk joins us now from Atlanta, Georgia. Margaret, obviously for now the worst is behind us on the East Coast, but there was a time back in March, early April, when really you would walk outside your door and feel a chill because there was a realization that there was this deadly virus that was not, going away, that was going to be around for some time, and unless everybody sheltered in place, basically, there was no way of killing this virus. Is that how it feels now in places like Georgia and places like Texas?
I don't
I can't really speak for Texas because I'm in Atlanta. I don't think it really feels that way yet for Georgia, but Georgia is not one of the states, oddly enough, where it's spiking as much as in Texas. Houston, you've got, they're going to run out of ICU capacity possibly today and run out of their backup capacity in about 10 days. So I'm sure it does feel like that in Houston. I'm in Atlanta. But
So, Margaret, I mean, I guess the reporting that I've read from you and the rest of your team, it's just it's really an issue of perhaps they opened a little bit too early. The restrictions that we're so used to here in the Northeast weren't not put in place or enforced as much in those markets. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
yes, I think in a lot of these states they were never as serious about it as New York was. It was never as restricted, and then they began lifting. In Georgia, it was like late April, and most of the other places in May. And they've lifted much faster than the East Coast has in general, and they weren't as serious in the first place.
Margaret, there's obviously a big debate about mask wearing. Is that a debate in Atlanta?
Atlanta is pretty good about it. I would say the larger state, it's a big debate, but Atlanta has been masks everywhere. And there's been some talk about it, but it hasn't been there was a huge debate in Montgomery, Alabama, just last week, and they did end up with a mask order, but there was a lot of talk about personal freedoms and things like that there.
So, Margaret, what's the next steps, do you think, for some of these states like California, Texas, Florida? Again, the Texas coming out today, the governor saying, let's stop this phased reopening here. What do you expect going forward? Should the trends continue?
I would expect to see a lot more crackdown. I would expect to see more mask orders. There were two other mask orders statewide put out just yesterday, one in Nevada and one in North Carolina. I'd expect to see them in cities. And I think in Florida, they're talking about cracking down on bars and nightclubs because people are just not doing the social distancing that was sort of the condition of the reopening, and no one's really enforcing it. I think in Orlando, they're talking about yanking liquor licenses if they find crowded bars and nightclubs with no mask, no social distancing. And then, some of these reopenings we're going to have to slow down. North Carolina froze its reopening for 3 weeks yesterday. And as you just said at the top of this segment, Texas just did it within the hour.
In Atlanta, what kind of leadership has there been, Margaret? Are people sort of tuning in on a daily basis? Are they looking for information on the coronavirus? Or are they just sort of going about their daily business?
I think people have been tuning in on a daily basis to what the latest numbers are here. But in Atlanta and in Georgia, which opened earlier than any other state reopened, the numbers have not really started climbing until probably after Mother's Day. And now they really are climbing. But I think there was a point where people had just kind of forgotten about it.
All right. So, Margaret, next steps here. One of the things I think is going to be difficult is a lot of people, I think, are just fatigued by this whole thing. And, boy, I couldn't imagine if our numbers went back up again and we had to then go back to quarantine. I can't imagine that. So I suspect in some of these states we're 14, 15 weeks into this whole thing. Boy, it's going to be awful hard to get these people to safe distance, wear masks. Is there a concern that people's compliance isn't going to be what it might have been at the beginning of the pandemic?
I think it'll be a lot harder. People have cabin fever. They are, maybe they don't know anyone that got sick. I don't know. But I myself have gone to the store and realized I didn't bring my mask, which I was religious about for weeks. Would go back home and get it. But yeah, I think it's going to be harder to get people to pay attention this time.
Yeah. Where are you hearing the most complaints in terms of businesses, Margaret? I mean, obviously here in New York, there's a huge service industry, and so it's very difficult for waiters, bartenders, entertainers and so on to think about what the future might be. What's the dominant industry in Georgia?
Well, the dominant industry that's been hit by this probably is the same one. It's hospitality and restaurants and bars. And they were, in Georgia, they were allowed to reopen like in late April, but most of them did not, and there were very strict requirements on how many people could go in, and for some of them it wasn't even worth it. So so they weren't bringing the staff back. So that's been a huge hit here. We also have a big poultry industry here, and that has been hit hard in some of the rural counties.
Right. All right, interesting. We'll have to keep on top of this. Margaret Newkirk covering the pandemic for Bloomberg News. She's based in Atlanta. And again, the story, Vonnie, is some of these big states. I know the Secretary of Labor, Scalia, was trying to downplay it a little bit, but we're talking to some of the biggest states in the country: California, Texas, Florida, just massive states, big populations, big sources of GDP, seeing spikes in cases. And they're going to have to do the things that New York and New Jersey and Connecticut did, that tough steps to try to get this in check here.
Yes, and ongoing sort of redesigning of plans, right? Just look at Disney. It had planned to open in California in July. Now it's walking back those plans. It's still planning on opening in Florida, but we'll see if that doesn't get walked back either before that plan is supposed to come into effect. It's just really, really hard to see that right now. And you've seen the tri-state area now banning people from coming in. That's sort of a new development there too.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's going to be affecting some of the sports leagues, because the sports leagues are all talking about professional sports, about reopening, some of which are really depending upon Florida as one of the hubs to do so. So a lot of rethinking there. Just taking a quick snapshot of the markets. Coming back a little bit, the S&P down about 12 points, Dow down 90 points. That's 25,303 on the Dow. NASDAQ down 20 points, 99.90, just below 10,000 on the NASDAQ. For Vonnie Quinn, I'm Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local...
My name is Donya. I moved to Manchester in 2010. I came from Afghanistan. The first school day was a bit tough. I had no friends, couldn't speak English, and felt a bit left out. My high school teacher was very supportive. She matched me up with friends that spoke the same language as me. Having friends gave me a lot of confidence. I felt like I'm not being left out.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Get free one-to-one support with our teacher training advisors to get one step closer to the classroom. Subject to eligibility. Search Get Into Teaching.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a robot or to someone called Robert or Derek or Sanjay or Sue or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hey, it's Ali. Can I give you a hand?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
The big Volkswagen event is now on. If you're after a new Volkswagen, we offer to pay your first 3 months finance payments and an additional £500 to £1,000 contribution to your deposit at 3.8% APR representative. Hello, sir. Do any take your fancy?
Well, yes, a new Golf or T-Cross. A Tiguan. No, Passat. Oh, I need to sit down.
Here, have a seat.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July, excludes e-Golf at participating retailers only. Minimum 46 months to receive 3 months finance payments. Indemnities may be required. Volkswagen Finance. Contact your local retailer to book an appointment.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. I'm David Weston. We're going to start with the markets once again today. I'd say they're a bit soft, trying to figure out what's going on with the virus, what's going on with eco numbers, but you know who knows all this? That's Scarlett Fuchs. She brings it to us now.
Hi, David. Good to speak with you. Yeah, the eco data was fairly mixed. The market feels very unsettled. It looks pretty unsettled as well because we had a drop at the open, so there was certainly a direction there. And an attempt at a comeback kind of fizzled out as well. That came as a bunch of virus-related headlines crossed the wires, most notably Texas halting the newest phases of its plans to reopen the economy and cases in Arizona jumping 5%. You're looking there at average value at time. It just illustrates the extent to which we've seen trading dry up in the S&P 500. It's really been a slower than typical trading day so far. Just compared with yesterday, for instance, when we had the big sell-off, we have trading in the NASDAQ off by 25% versus the same time yesterday. Typically, this is the time that you would see investors plow back into their equity safe havens like tech names. But instead, today, the sectors that are outperforming are the two that have been hit the hardest so far this year, financials and energy. Financials still off about 24% year to date, even after today's gain. Energy down about 38% year to date. The KBW Bank Index doing well today as regulators roll back some of the rules that were put in place after the great financial crisis. Banks, for instance, will no longer have to set aside money when trading derivatives with their affiliates. So that frees up capital, and that's always a good thing for a bank. The regulators are also modifying the Volcker rule to allow Wall Street banks to increase investments in VC funds. In addition, don't forget to watch out for the Fed releasing stress test results after the close today. And David, I just wanted to end with Apple and Disney because Apple's closing another 7 stores in Houston after closing 11 last week because of increased virus counts across different states, and Disney delaying the opening of Disneyland in LA, Anaheim to be precise, indefinitely. It doesn't think it can get approval from state officials in time for the planned mid-July opening. David?
Can't wait for Disneyland, no question about it. Thank you so much to Scarlett Fu for that report on the market. So we talk about the markets every single day, so let's go visit one of them, exactly where it is happening. The New York Stock Exchange had to close to traders, its Florida traders, for the first time in its 228-year history, but now it is coming back. They're bringing people back gradually, about a third of them so far, and we welcome now Stacey Cunningham. She is the president of the New York Stock Exchange, coming to us from the floor. So welcome, Stacey. Really good to have you with us. Give us a sense of what's different now that you've brought at least some of the traders back onto the floor. How is it making a difference? How is it going?
It's been a tremendous success, David. Thanks for having me on. We're excited to be able to not only bring traders back, which we started to do 4.5 weeks ago, but we've been able to continue to increase the number of people coming in because we've had such compliance with the rules and regulations that we've put in place. I'm able to talk to you without wearing a mask because I'm not on the actual trading floor. I'm over the trading floor using a remote cam. But on the trading floor, everyone's wearing a mask. Everyone's following the social distancing protocols. We put a number of protections in place, like installing plexiglass and other things, so that we can keep people safer and be able to scale up the number of people that are coming into the building. And importantly, we've seen it work. We've seen that we've been able to keep the community much safer. And I think that's a message for all of us across the U.S., across cities. When we reopen, we can do it responsibly, which will allow us to scale up and not have to go backwards.
And Stacey, can you keep going? I mean, absent a vaccine, how far can you go to bring it back to full strength, what you had before the pandemic?
Yes, we started with the businesses that were most impacted when we reopened. So the small independent floor brokers, which very often have less than 20 employees, were the largest portion of the first group to come back. Last week, we added on our market makers. They typically work for bigger firms. They're the ones that are responsible for overseeing trading in each of the companies that's listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They've been doing that remotely during the period that they were off the floor, and now they're able to do that live. We continue to scale up the number of people that are coming in, and assuming everyone continues to follow the protocols we put in place as they have been, we'll be able to continue that path.
So Stacey, you're maybe ahead of a number of the large financial institutions down on Wall Street. What do you think that you've learned that they could benefit from as they look to start bringing their people back?
I think it's really important that everyone that's coming in understands that following the protections it's not about protecting yourself, it's about protecting others. They want to be back here and they want to be able to engage in their ordinary business each day and earn a living. And so to do that, we need to protect everybody else in the environment. That's why it's been successful. And I think it's important for all of those businesses to get that buy-in and support from the community as you scale up.
So as you bring people back on the floor, what are you able to do? What are you able to accomplish that you couldn't? I mean, you were up and running, goodness knows, the whole time, virtually, like all of us are now from our homes. But what did you give up by that virtual operation that you're getting back now with people being present?
Yeah, our model is unique in that we combine a market maker who has accountability with human judgment on the trading floor and on sitting on top of very sophisticated technology. So we had two parts of that equation when the floor was closed. Market makers still had their the same responsibilities that they have when the floor is fully open, and we're running on state-of-the-art technology, best in breed. But we lost that human judgment, and what we saw was that it cost investors something to not have that reduction in volatility that the human judgment also contributes to. It was an interesting experiment for us. I never would have chosen to engage in it and close the floor just to measure it, but we didn't quite know how much of our outperformance came from having a model that has a market maker versus having human judgment. And what we saw, and what a couple of academics have actually studied since we closed the floor, was that the outperformance comes from both. So we still outperformed other securities, but not to the same extent that we normally do when the floor is opened. So by reopening the floor, we're closer to our full service offering where we can dampen volatility, particularly at the end of the trading day when you start to see stocks move more rapidly. And that closing auction is the largest liquidity event in the world. On last Friday, we had a record closing auction at the New York Stock Exchange, which was 23% higher than our previous record from a couple of years ago. So we were getting that full force back on the floor and leading to better results for investors.
Stacey, even as the pandemics are going on, markets are evolving, and the New York Stock Exchange is evolving or attempting to evolve, specifically with respect to direct listings as a way to go public for a company as alternative to a traditional IPO. You had an application to the SEC. They didn't like it quite so much. You've come back with another one now. Give us a sense from your perspective where that stands right now.
Yeah, direct listings are a really interesting innovation in the capital market space. And while they aren't for everybody, we're hearing from both investors and issuers that they're looking for more choices. So we've been working with the SEC very productively on refining the offering of the direct listing. We've had two companies to date. So Barry McCarthy, who's the CFO of Spotify, came up with the idea, brought it to us. We rolled out the first one. Slack was the second company to choose that path for their public listing just over a year ago. And where we've been building on that model is to allow for capital raising. What the direct listing really does is it separates the timing, decouples capital raising from going public. So you can choose to go public, but not necessarily raise money at the same time. So the two to date have taken that path. Now what we're working on is, what if you want to raise money at the same time, but you'd like the exchange and the process of opening that morning to determine how that offering gets priced. So that's the phase that we're working on with the SEC now. We filed the first iteration back in December, and we work productively with them on questions that they have. So this most recent filing, which we submitted on Monday, answers mechanical questions around how that offering will actually be priced in the morning, how does it get entered into the market as an order, and what measures need to happen that morning to get that live in public. And we've been advancing that ball so that we continue to work with issuers and investors on having another alternative to the public markets.
So Stacey, you're in the middle of this regulatory process, and none of us knows exactly how or when it will come out. But from your perspective at this point, is it really a mechanical issue the way you described it? Because that sounds like we have to work it through. It may take some time, but it's not a substantive issue that you will get there sooner or later.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's how it worked with Spotify. It took us about a year and a half working with the SEC, the Division of Corporation Finance, very constructive feedback and dialogue, because their goal is to protect investors. And so they want to make sure that they are working with us to develop a process that achieves that goal. It took about a year and a half to get that done. We are working on this iteration, and they're not substantive issues. They're more about how does it actually come to market? How does it get priced? How do investors know what to expect that morning from a price level range perspective? And how do we know that all that interest gets satisfied? So they're really more mechanical issues that we've been working on. I do think that we'll see direct listings have the ability to raise capital at the same time of their listing in the not too distant future. And there are some companies that have been asking about it too, because they're interested in pursuing that path. It really just builds on new innovations. I mean, we've seen SPACs. I mean, I don't know how we've seen over this period of time that during COVID-19, when the markets have been very turbulent, you've seen a tremendous number of special purpose acquisition corporations, which are management teams raising money, IPOing, without having the business operations yet, but planning to go out and acquire a business. And I think the fact that we've seen so many SPACs come to market over the past few months is really indicative of the fact that there are opportunistic businesses out there. It's another way to come public, because at the time of that business combination, the combined entity is now a public company. So it's just one more path to public we've been working on.
Stacey, in success, if this all gets worked out properly, how much difference will it make in your business at the New York Stock Exchange? Do you anticipate more companies will go public, or if they go public, they'll be listed with the New York Stock Exchange? How material would it be for the New York Stock Exchange?
Well, first of all, I don't think direct listings are going to be the path for every company, but there are some companies that are considering it. We're the only one that's ever held one, right? The fact that we have human beings involved in the process on the trading floor, overseeing that price discovery process, puts us in a unique position to be able to make sure that things are flawlessly executed, not just at a time of IPO, but especially when you look at a direct listing. What we've seen in the direct listings to date is those opening auctions are much larger than the typical opening auction for an IPO. Both Spotify and Slack were in the top 5 size number of shares printed in their opening auction of all opening auctions in history, among a list with the largest IPOs of all time. Even though as companies, they were smaller than some of those companies, really massive trades, because so much price discovery is happening. That's why price discovery is such a critical part of the direct listing process, and we're really uniquely positioned to accomplish that.
Stacey, you mentioned the turmoil, I think it's fair to say, in the economy generally, which has really caused the government, through monetary policy and fiscal policy, to inject an awful lot of money into the economy. Is it shifting the way corporations are raising their capital? Because let's face it, borrowing has become a lot cheaper. Do you think that this may, over the medium term at least, mean the corporations increasingly turn away from equity raises and into debt raises?
We saw a number of companies leveraging both equity and debt throughout the pandemic. Just in those weeks the floor was closed, we raised over $35 billion, or companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange raised over $35 billion during that period of time, using follow-on offerings as well as capital raising in a more traditional IPO process. So I think you'll see that when there are tools out there, companies are going to take advantage of them. Many companies were raising money because their businesses were under pressure due to the pandemic, but others were shoring up their balance sheets for the future. And it's been a very active capital market season, as you know and you see, and I think we'll see that continue. Certainly in the IPO market.
Okay,
we have 5 deals expected to price tonight.
Wow, there you go. Thank you so much to Stacey Cunningham. She's the president of the New York Stock Exchange. Great to have you with us, Stacey. And a reminder, a program note, that Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to be back with Wall Street Week, covering all the events of the week, including what's going on in the New York Stock Exchange. In the meantime, here, coming up next, we're going to talk about those economic numbers, particularly the jobless claims that remain stubbornly high. We're going to talk about that with Mike McKee. That's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Market upheavals.
The narrative is driven by uncertainty.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get in.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now, it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set, and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
At Argos, our sale is on and so much more. Go online to shop our range of amazing deals, including tech, toys and home. And style up your home with up to half price on selected home and furniture. Visit our website to shop our full range of deals. With Argos, you're good to go. Subject to availability, conditions apply, sale ends 14th of July.
It could be a first-timer or a long-timer or a once-in-a-whiler. It could be a little or a lot. It could be the ticket under your fridge magnet. It could be someone with your first name and last and middle. It could be you. This Saturday's £15 million lotto jackpot must be won, or thousands of you will win a share of the jackpot. Play online or on the app. Lotto from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
When the world stopped, people in our local communities didn't. At the Co-op, we want to say thank you to all the local heroes. Daksha wanted to help the NHS, so she and her husband Parish cooked 50 meals for a hospital in Harrow. But they didn't stop there. They've set up the Community Response Kitchen, delivering to hospitals, schools and homeless shelters across London. Now they're delivering between 1,000 and 3,000 meals every day, and they've achieved all this with no funding, just the support of local businesses and local people. To Daksha and Parish and all the local heroes that keep our communities going, the Co-op says thank you.
Looking to freshen up your listening on TuneIn? Head to the homepage to discover something new. There you'll see custom recommendations based on your listening habits, along with new episodes of shows you've enjoyed in the past. Uncover your next audio obsession on the homepage.
Ready to talk brass tacks on what's happening in Major League Baseball? Turn to the Effectively Wild podcast from Fangraphs for daily statistics, analysis, and commentary.
One team will say, yeah, we're going to keep paying minor leaguers their stipend, and another team will say, we're going to extend the stipend through this month, and then another team will say, nope, we're cutting them off. So are extending it at least through August, which would basically be the end of the minor league regular season.
Search Effectively Wild on TuneIn to listen.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
On Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crump, and this is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. And even as Mark was talking, there was a headline crossing the Bloomberg, and it says that the Senate now has passed a bill that will punish China because of Hong Kong. We know that in Washington, where there is not much bipartisanship, right now there seems to be agreement on both sides of the aisle that something needs to be done about China. We'll continue to follow the story as it develops. In the meantime, we got economic data out this morning, and among other things, it showed that nearly 1.5 million Americans filed for jobless claims last week, still a stubbornly high number. We welcome now Michael McKee. He's Bloomberg Chief Economics and Policy Correspondent. So, Mike, it's coming down, but really very, very slowly.
That's the important thing, David. We're all desperate for good news, but the problem is we're not really getting it. And it's not the actual number itself, but the direction of the number, basically flat. 1,480,000 people filing for jobless claims last week, raising the question, why are that many people still losing jobs 14 weeks into this? Or is there something wrong with either states processing or with fraud or with something else? It's a lot of people who keep losing jobs, at least if you take it literally. Continuing claims dropped just a little bit. They're below 20 million, 19,522,000, but that's 2 weeks old in terms of the number. And it also doesn't include those getting pandemic unemployment insurance, the people who were self-employed or gig workers. 728,000 more added to the rolls to this last week, which means that over 30 million people are getting unemployment benefits of one kind or another, David.
So does this tell us anything about the jobs numbers that we're going to get next week?
It doesn't appear to, in the sense that they were disconnected from the jobs numbers last month, but economists think we might get a small gain in jobs in May because a number of the other numbers were better in May. We saw that with durable goods today, durable goods orders rising on a percentage basis, which is what economists had expected, 15.8% after dropping 18% in April. But the important thing to look at is that chart there. That's the dollar figure, and we are still way, way below where we were in February before all this started. So while we did get a little bit of a bounce, even if we got some additional jobs in May, it's not going to show a real strong improvement given how many people we see are still getting unemployment insurance.
Mike, I think there was a surprise to the upside on durable goods and things like that. Is that giving you any encouragement?
Not really, for the reasons I was saying that we have at this point. We're still so below where we were. Also, you look at the trade figures out today, the trade deficit widening significantly to $74.3 billion, in large part because exports just collapsed, which means we weren't making things and we weren't selling things. And the implication there is that second quarter growth is going to be worse than we thought. After some of the April numbers came in better than expected and a little bit of May came in better than expected, people were marking up their GDP figures for this quarter to, maybe negative 30% seasonally adjusted on an annual rate. But now that's going to go down. You look at the Atlanta Fed GDP now numbers, they're going to be reduced because of trade. So all in all, we get some minor movement in the numbers, but no real change in the overall story. The economy is still in trouble.
And Mike, to sort of gild the lily here, that's before we have Texas saying we're not going to continue our expansion. We have Florida cutting back. We got real problems going on in some of the states, which cannot be good news for the economy, I should say.
Absolutely not. And the more states experience this surge, the more likely we're going to see another surge in jobless claims. We're going to see people who might have dropped off the rolls otherwise stay on them, and new people come on because companies that had started to reopen and maybe have used up any PPP money that they had will have to let people go. And so it is definitely bad news, and it does suggest that any hopes of a V-shaped rebound are really a dream at this point. We're going to struggle, whether we go down significantly or just flatline. It's going to be a long road.
Okay, I'm afraid that might be right. Thank you so much to our colleague, Mike McKee. Coming up next here, we're going to do Stock of the Hour. It's Disney. It's down today. News is going to have to pull back on its plans to reopen Disneyland out in California next month. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone. That should do it. Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Business and finance have always held surprises, but this is brand new.
The move risks fueling more demonstrations, and Stokes' concerned that essential freedoms will be curbed.
Karen Muskow and Nathan Hager.
Chinese lawmakers approved national security legislation.
Expert navigation through uncharted territory.
Tell us the range of outcomes that we could see on that front.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Disney is our stock of the hour today because, unfortunately, it is down on news that may have to postpone the opening of its Disneyland theme park out in California. Kaylee Lyons is here to explain it to us. Kaylee?
Yeah, David. Well, that park over in Anaheim has been closed since March 13th. It was set to reopen on July 17th, and that has now been delayed indefinitely. Basically, Disney didn't think they were going to be able to get the proper state and local government approvals or reach agreements with the unions in time to reopen that park. Now, of course, this is pretty significant for Disney. It comes as, of course, cases are rising in California. Just yesterday, they were up 7.1%. But the Anaheim park in particular is key because, as we know, parks are a major revenue driver for Disney, and Anaheim is one of the most attended parks. Nearly 19 million people attended last year. That is the second largest attendance globally. Granted, the one in Orlando, that Disney World, is actually the most attended, and that is still set to reopen on July 11th. But this is, again, a key revenue driver for Disney. We saw in the second quarter the impact these shutdowns had. That operating income was cut in more than half to just $640 million. So Disney really wants to get these parks reopened, David.
Yeah, and Disney World in Florida is really key, as you just suggested, because it's true Disney World itself is something slightly bit bigger, but if you take it and put it together with Epcot and also with the rest of their theme parks down there, it's almost 3 times Anaheim. And I have to go back on that. It's really going to hurt them.
Right, and I would make the point, too, that even if it does reopen as scheduled on July 11th, it's going to do so at a very limited capacity, only 30% of the usual, so that is a big impact. And I have to also note, David, as this was an initial jobless claims day, the impact that these parks have on their broader economies. In Southern California, for example, Disneyland has an economic impact of $8.5 billion a year. It provides just the park 35,000 jobs, so we have to consider all the ripple effects of this as well, David.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so very much to Kayla Lyons for that report on Disney. Speaking of Disney, we're going to be joined by Abigail Disney, the renowned filmmaker, on the question of income inequality in this country. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are fluctuating as investors remain concerned about the spike in new coronavirus cases. And since the pandemic isn't over, neither are the side effects, like unemployment. Americans filed almost 1.5 million jobless claims last week. That moves the total since March closer to 50 million. Macy's is going to slash 3,900 corporate and management jobs in an effort to save $630 million a year as it navigates the hit it took from the coronavirus closures. And you can add Chuck E. Cheese to the list of corporate casualties of the coronavirus pandemic. It's filed for bankruptcy after being forced to temporarily close 500 of its restaurants in 47 states. On Wall Street, the Dow is up 37 points, NASDAQ up 26, S&P 500 up 2. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Gathering world-renowned experts takes effort.
We have the perfect person.
Asking them the right questions takes Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly.
Is this possibly early indications of a second wave?
Bloomberg Business Week.
Silicon Valley will be forever changed by this pandemic. What's your take?
Are they paying off their balances?
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern.
That is a significant shift.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Our colleague Eric Schatzker talked with Barry Sternlicht, the head of Starwood Capital, this week, and he talked about what's coming up in November with the election, and he asked, among other things, whom Barry would vote for if the election were held today.
I'm going to wait to see who Biden picks as his vice presidential candidate. I think it'll say a lot for the direction of the country. I'd like the country to be governed from the middle. 43% of the country is independent, and they're pulled in both extreme directions by two radical parties that I don't think represent the majority of Americans today. So it's a tough thing. I don't understand why Trump, who I knew before he got into office, why he has his stand on the environment. It's not an important stand. He could give the independents something. He probably can't go pro-choice, but he could go pro-environment, or at least enter the dialogue on the disaster that we're creating to this climate, and join the conversation, because it's 96% of scientists agree that we're creating a disaster for ourselves. And on the left, I don't think you want to throw out capitalism. I don't think there's a better system. It needs to be regulated. Some of the financial engineering that we've done in the name of liquidity, or whatever you call it, I think is a joke and isn't necessary, and you need to regulate it. Capitalism hasn't worked. Like, for example, when he cut corporate taxes, he could have tied that to job creation in the United States. There could have been a more direct link to bringing back jobs. You have an opportunity now, because I think the one thing the pandemic showed is that our supply chains are too long, and that we've outsourced key things that we need that we never thought were key, whether it was masks or ventilators or other PPP equipment. I mean, now somebody said we went from just-in-time inventory, we have to create just-in-case inventory. And that should be a manufacturing boom here, led by technology and robots. Even though they won't be the jobs of Ford Motor, but Americans are going to have to pay $1 more. We've never been willing to do that. We're going to have to pay $1 more for a product, because we cannot match the labor costs of the Chinese or the Vietnamese or the Bangladeshis. And so we either have to extract the labor from the product, or be willing to pay more for a product made in the United States. We've never been willing to do that. My father ran a manufacturer of flashlights and batteries. He ran it in Norwalk, Connecticut. He went to see the largest retailer in the United States, whose name starts with a W and ends with a T. And they said, we'll buy your product, but I need it for $2.50. And my dad could only make it for $2.70 in Norwalk, Connecticut. So he had it made in China. And then he got the order from the company that starts with a W and ends with a T. So he outsourced Norwalk, Connecticut. And this was 25 years ago. And that's because Walmart wanted that flashlight cheaper for its U.S. customers. And so 90% of what Walmart sells you is, I just told you the name, was manufactured in China. And we demanded it. We wanted to buy Nike sneakers 30 years later for the same price we bought them for in 1965. So, and we did it. We actually succeeded in doing that. But we moved. They didn't steal our jobs. We encouraged them to manufacture for us because it was cheaper. and then it went a little overboard, and they didn't open their markets, and that's not fair, right? The currency doesn't convert. That's not fair. They're playing, and they didn't open their markets to American competitors, even the airways. So, but we were happy to have Chinese goods here, and the quality got better. In the beginning, the quality wasn't good, but then the quality got better. So, who am I going to vote for? I managed to avoid that. So, the far left scares me. I don't think that's America either, and I don't think. But we're upside down. Things like student loans. I mean, that's the one thing we should encourage in this country is the education of our youth. And the student loan should be at 1%. Should be the most subsidized loan in the country. And because the government gets a tithe, they get to get the taxes on their future income if they've made it through college. And why do I want them burdened with 10% loans, $200,000 of 10% loans that they're just dying under? We're supposed to encourage people to go to college and get a better, higher paying job. And then the government tax them. So there's a return on investment. That's what the federal government should do, encourage certain kinds of behavior. And we want to educate our youth. And that's how you build a strong country. It's not through weapons. It's through a strong economy. That's the strongest defense we can have for the United States is a strong economy. Not one on 23 trillion of debt and adding $2 trillion a month. I mean, that is not a sustainable program. So, it's making the nation wealthier by educating everybody and then private partner mentoring, companies mentoring, picking up the German system of companies mentoring and working with youth, helping them gear up, supporting 2- and 4-year vocational colleges. We have to get on the job because I think that's the biggest challenge the United States has faced is that the deterioration of its public school system has led to this, what you see today on the streets of where people are outraged.
Barry Sternlicht talking with our colleague Eric Schatzker. In the meantime, there's some breaking news, not unexpected, but not good news either. Houston area intensive care units have now reached maximum capacity, something that everyone was concerned about. It appears it has now happened. We'll continue to follow that story here at Bloomberg. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Coronavirus proved that every aspect...
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
The Mini Electric was raring to go until ready, set, stop. We hit the power down switch. We waited. But now it's time to start up again. We're ready with the Mini Electric and whole Mini range online. Showroom safety measures are set and we're feeling good to go. Find your perfect Mini at mini.co.uk.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing, so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft Teams. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call us today on 0800 169 1745. That's 0800 169 1745.
Stay
Stay close to college hoops conversation with the College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Doster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference, nostalgic flashbacks to classic games, and big picture discussions on the future of the sport.
Yes, they found a way to ensure that there was a financial incentive for be able to get paid for K to go there, if that makes sense. But it's not, there was still a recruitment involved, right? Let me think about it like this.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Indoor gatherings, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Open windows for better ventilation. Try to avoid gathering indoors as much as possible. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Okay, here we go. With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more. Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Look at things, I think, philosophically. Like, do we honor work over ownership, or is ownership the more important role in an economic system? I happen to believe work is something that needs to be honored more. So if you take that philosophical viewpoint and you look at our tax structure, then you see that, for instance, the capital gains are taxed more favorably, and that income can be viewed as a capital gain, say if you're in private equity or in hedge fund investing. So the carried interest loophole I would go after first, right out of the gate, partly because of the money that it would generate, which is actually not enough to fix the problems we're in, but it's certainly enough to send the message that the work of people should be taxed favorably, because work is what makes markets work. Sorry, I got lost in that sentence. I would go after the inheritance tax, which has been called the death tax for years. It is not. It's a tax on an inheritance and not on the estate. So we need to be looking at that as a tax that I receive as a person who inherits money that I pay for and I'm responsible for because of the privilege I have of being able to have money passed to me by my grandfather, whose work and accumulation of capital was supported by the state in more ways than we can count. We need a wealth tax. I frankly believe Elizabeth Warren is completely right about that. I think it is very easy to talk about a 1% or a 2% wealth tax that would generate so much value in this economy, given how much wealth is concentrated, and is sitting there not moving through the economy in ways that it really should, and certainly not supporting a valuing of work over ownership. So if we could move some of those assets that are just sitting there like stones in a mountain back into circulation in the economy, we would have money to fund schools. We would have money to fund all of the things that we have let erode over these last 50 years.
Abigail, one would say that if you go back to the Gilded Age, it took a fairly wealthy person who was part of the establishment to turn things around. Teddy Roosevelt in reform in the late 19th century, early 20th century. What's it going to take this time? Is it going to require some of the wealthiest among us to really step up and make a change? Because it is a systemic problem, as you suggest.
Right. It is going to require wealthy people to change the way they understand their relationship to the rest of the country. Because right now, everything that wealthy people do only reinforces them in this idea that they're separate and different, and that their fates are not woven together with the fates of people across the rest of the economy. So the private rooms and the private planes, the private lessons and all the private schools, all of this is reinforcing of a set of assumptions about how different the rich are and special and entitled. So we are going to have to teach our wealthy people to be different. We are going to have to show them all that they benefit. And we're going to have to talk about this sort of radical idea that there is such a thing as too much money. There is such a thing as too much money. And like, if we could get our wealthy class, they're always going to be bad actors, but for the most part, most people mean well, and most people want to be good people. And I think that overcoming of this idea that what you do and what you have has nothing to do with everybody else, if we could overcome that misconception, I think that wealthy people would be very supportive of behaving differently as citizens in a bigger society.
Abigail, what's gone wrong with the political system? Because I've looked at the numbers, and it's the 99% who are being disadvantaged by the 1%. That 99% could outvote the 1%. Why doesn't that happen? The theory in this country was once we gave everybody the vote, it would correct itself. That didn't happen. Why?
Yeah. Well, I got to say that, we cannot underestimate the importance of Citizens United. But Citizens United happened as the result